Douluo, starting from the spirit of time worm, this video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76 to Versus 7. Zhang Yuming didn't like the style of these nobles. It was because of their manipulation of the contestants that the Northland College had been unable to integrate the strength of the entire college and form the strongest team, resulting in poor results in the Soul Master competition point. But he couldn't openly oppose the nobles, because most of the funds needed to maintain and operate the college were provided by the nobles. Under such a premise, a little privilege was inevitable. Zhang Yuming expressed sympathy for Rommel's experience, but for the sake of the overall situation, he would not speak out. Gulan said in a somewhat exaggerated tone, since you, the instructor, and most of the team members said that Rommel was not suitable, then he must be unsuitable. Just replace him with a suitable candidate. Even if you are the captain of the team, you can't be arbitrary and ignore the feelings of the team members, right? Amon raised his right hand and stroked his glasses. This is based on the overall consideration of the team. Rommel and I can work together to exert stronger power, and Franco's joining goes against the original intention of improving combat effectiveness. Seeing Amon still speaking for him at this time, Rommel was also moved. He hadn't been cared for so much for a long time. He approached Amon and whispered, "Captain, let's forget it. It's okay, I'll be a substitute. There's no need to conflict with a real earl for me." Amon glanced at him and said gently, "Don't worry, watch quietly, I'll solve it." Rommel had the urge to cry. His eyes were red. In fact, Amon didn't mind replacing Rommel, as long as the price was right. Everything would be fine. If the benefits were enough, he wouldn't even mind replacing himself. But the Ross family cleared the relationship behind the 4 team members, but missed him and didn't give him the corresponding benefits. So Amon naturally wouldn't agree. Toughly confronting Earl Ross is also a way for Amon to show himself and increase his weight. Otherwise some people won't remember to give him a share of the cake, just like this time. Effect. Combat effectiveness? Maybe you don't consider the angle comprehensively enough. The combat effectiveness of the group can't just look at the individual strength. Goran was a little unhappy after being humiliated. Franco may not be able to beat Rommel in a one-on-one situation, but there is no clear criterion for judging team combat effectiveness. It will change with the opponent and tactics. Amon's mouth curled up slightly, revealing a slightly sarcastic smile. What I mean is that Franco's joining has affected my mood and prevented me from giving my best. Ridiculous reason. Are you determined to go against me? Goran's tone darkened. He looked at Zhang Yuming and said, since the team members have disagreements, all the unstable factors will be eliminated. Anyway, there is still a year, and the academy has enough time to select new members. Hearing that Goran wanted to replace Amon and Rommel together, Vidiel and Alia's faces changed. They didn't expect things to develop to this extent. They were willing to support Franco to replace Rommel, but it didn't mean they were willing to stand on the opposite side of Amon. Lava came out of Yan Jin's hands. She wanted to use her actions to shut up this annoying guy who kept magnifying the contradictions and even affected her relationship with Amon. Amon chuckled, clapped his hands, and interrupted Yan Jin's actions. You are right, but which side is the unstable factor? The purpose of the academy is to select a stronger team, so let's have a fight. Rommel and I are on the same team, and the rest of you who support Franco are on the same team. The winner is the king, and the loser shuts up. Zhang Yuming glanced at Amon and nodded. Okay. Goran looked a little puzzled. 2 against 5. This is not a wise choice, no matter how you look at it, but Amon's reason cannot be refuted, not to mention that the principal Zhang Yuming also agreed, so he did not object. Wait, me, Mr. Amon, I'm on your side too. Lei Yin raised his hand and shouted, you, go to your sister's side, I just want to see your strength. Amon smiled. Vidiel and Alia wondered if they should also use the excuse of being on the same team with Franco affects my performance to slack off. Yan Jin was thinking about which temporary teammates to start with. As if he saw their thoughts, Amon said, don't hold back, use your full strength. I will consider replacing those who are too weak. Yan Jin raised his head and met Amon's eyes. Really go all out, yeah. Amon nodded with a smile. He glanced at Sun Boyuan and said, you go too. Just enough to make up 7. Ah. Me. I'm the Soul King. Sun Boyuan pointed at himself with his index finger, looking confused. Or, you can try. Amon looked at Goran again. Point of course, Garland would not go on stage. He frowned, then relaxed and said to Sun Boyuan, teacher Sun, since he has asked so, you should come along. He no longer wanted to think about Amon's intentions. If he couldn't win even in this way, he could only admit defeat. Don't dawdle, come quickly, don't take it lightly, use all your strength. Yan Jin, who had already jumped onto the stage, shouted at Sun Boyuan and others. Since Amon said to go all out, she would go all out. Sun Boyuan hesitated for a moment, but still went on stage and stood next to Franco. Captain Amon, is it really okay to do this? Rommel looked confused. Amon's actions were completely incomprehensible. Lian was originally on their side, but was driven to the opposite side by Amon. Yan Jin didn't seem to have the intention to fight seriously at the beginning, but Amon said that he was full of fighting spirit. Looking at Yan Jin, who was eager to try, and Sun Boyuan, a teacher at the level of Soul King, Romil felt his scalp tingling. Don't worry, you just need to cooperate with me in a while, Amon said with a smile. Only Yan Jin and Lian understood what Amon meant. They knew that he wanted to show some strength to gain the autonomy of the participating teams in the Soul Master competition and reduce the interference from the academy. Yan Jin originally had the idea of challenging Amon. Although he knew that he had little chance of winning, he also wanted to see the gap, so he seemed very excited. Lian didn't have too many ideas. He just tried his best to cooperate. Zhang Yuming smiled and said loudly, since you all agree to such a competition, let me be the referee. He looked at Amon, showing a bit of inquiry. After all, this was proposed by Amon on his own initiative, and all the unfavorable conditions were also requested by him, so he thought he was somewhat sure. In addition, Yan Jin's solemn expression also confirmed this point. He knew that Yan Jin, Lei Yin, and Amon could basically be regarded as a small group, and they must know each other. Judging from Yan Jin's expression, she didn't seem to think that this would be an easy battle, even though they seemed to have the upper hand. Zhang Yuming's face showed expectation. Could the combination of Amon and Rommel really beat the other 7? Chapter 77. Two Knives. When it really came to the time of fighting, the one who attacked the fastest and most fiercely was not Franco or Sun Boyuan, but Yan Jin. She has always been like this. Every time she enters the fighting state, she will show amazing ruthlessness and violence, and almost every move is for the purpose of risking her life. Lei Yin, let's go and give him a surprise. Yan Jin showed a wanton smile on his face. Lei Yin nodded, turned into a lightning, and moved in front of Yan Jin. Amon watched this scene with a smile, raised his right hand to stroke his monocle, and put his left hand on Rommel's shoulder. Although there are too many ways to win the battle, he chose the most expressive, the most intuitive visual impact, and the most shocking one. Don't resist. Let's fuse the martial soul. Rommel was stunned. Martial soul fusion. My martial soul is a bit special, which can greatly reduce the difficulty of martial soul fusion. As long as the opponent does not resist, I can perform martial soul fusion skills with almost anyone. Amon explained. No, I mean, what is martial soul fusion? Before Rommel could ask this question, Amon had already turned into a stream of light and sank into his body. On the other side of the ring, lava surged, lightning flashed, and in the interweaving of red and blue, Yan Jin and Lian merged into one. Accompanied by the sound of volcanic eruption and thunder explosion, a 10-meter tall lava giant appeared in the field. Its body was made of magma, and a thunder dragon was perched on its thick right arm. This is a martial soul fusion skill. It is formed by the fusion of the two top elemental martial souls, Xianli and Douluo. Yan Jin and Lian have both learned about martial soul fusion. Amon assisted them, and used a simplified version of martial soul fusion to improve their combat effectiveness after a real martial soul fusion with Amon in the Ironheart Mountains and the use of Lava Giant Soldier. Yan Jin has never forgotten the powerful power after that. She suddenly had an idea and tried it with Lian. As half siblings, they have a tacit understanding. Thunder and fire both represent the violent side of nature. and are symbols of destruction and ruin, and they do not conflict with each other. They fiddled with it behind Amon's back and came up with the current results. The surging power made Zhang Yuming couldn't help but applaud. In his opinion, this was enough to threaten the Soul Emperor, and even he himself would be injured if he didn't deal with it carefully. Vidiel and others were forced back by thunder and heat waves, and they looked at their friends beside them in horror. Franco opened his mouth in astonishment. At first, he was worried that Yan Jin and others would not try their best to help him, but looking at this, his worries were obviously unnecessary. I'm afraid that, even if he fought with others, it would be just like this. The giant was surrounded by violent thunder and surging flowing flames, and the mixed voice of Yan Jin and thunder came from its mouth. Amon, watch this. Thunderous roar. The giant waved his right arm, and a large amount of lava formed a pillar of fire, rising from the ground, like a volcanic eruption, and thunder also fell in the sky. The bottom up and top down attacks enveloped Amon and Rommel, and the terrifying power made the ring tremble. Franco looked horrified, and he suddenly remembered that his mother asked him to pursue Yan Jin. Whoever wants to pursue this kind of girl can pursue her. Anyway, he would never go, because this little punch can really kill people. Looking at the lingering lava and thunder, Vidiel suddenly worried about Amon's safety. Soon, their worries disappeared, replaced by greater horror and more shock. In the flames and thunder, a purple giant rose from the ground. It just appeared with only an upper body skeleton. With the surge of soul power, meridian-like lines spread all over the body, and it quickly filled up. It grew legs and put on armor. Its body size expanded rapidly until it reached a height of 50 meters. The 50-meter class purple giant occupied half of the ring, holding a 40-meter long machete in each hand. A man with long purple hair and a monocle on his right eye stood quietly on the giant's chest, his arms folded across his chest, looking down. When seeing the purple giant, Franco lost his will to fight. And even Yan Jin, who was always stubborn, felt his scalp tingling and a sense of powerlessness rising in his heart. She suddenly remembered the eyeless snake that was beaten to death by her, and Amon and the Ironheart Mountains. Is this the oppression it felt at that time? Zhang Yuming's pupils shrank when he saw Yan Jin and Lei Yin's martial soul fusion skills. He was still in the mood to admire and comment, but this purple giant brought him a strong sense of horror and a strong sense of threat. The giant moved, and it swung the long sword in its hand. The 40-meter long sword fell down with a bang, and it shattered the ring with one blow. In the strong vibration and huge roar, Franco was so scared that he sat on the ground, staring at the sword not far away with a dull look. On the other side of the blade, Sun Boyan, who also fell to the ground, also had a dull and confused look on his face. Is this the level of a young soul master? With everyone's mind shaken, the purple giant swung the second knife, and this knife landed outside the ring, not far from Count Ross. The dust stirred up by the blade made Count Ross look dirty, but he was in no mood to tidy up his appearance at the moment. He just turned his neck mechanically, looking at the blade that was taller than himself, his face twitching constantly. I said, Rommel is an official member of our team. Who objects? Amon's cold, emotionless voice came from the purple giant. Count Ross took a deep breath, inhaled a lot of dust, and couldn't help coughing. He covered his nose and moved away from the dusty area. He took another deep breath to calm down his chaotic emotions. He showed an ugly smile on his face and said with a firm attitude and a resolute tone, what Amon said is so right. If anyone wants to replace Rommel's starting position, I will be the first to disagree. Principal. Zhang Yuming adjusted his facial expression, smiled and nodded, and expressed his opinion. Amon has a good vision, and he cooperates with Rommel very well. Replacing Rommel is indeed a great weakening of the team's strength. After that, all matters of the participating team will be left to you to decide. Amon, is this okay? Okay. Amon dissolved the fusion of his martial soul with Rommel. Without the support of soul power, the purple giant slowly dissipated. Rommel stared blankly at the damage caused by the two knives and had some ideas in his mind. Amon once again demonstrated to him how to use the martial soul, pointing out the direction for his next development. Yan Jin and Lei Yin dissolved the fusion of their martial souls and slumped on the ground. The previous attack almost exhausted their soul power, making them temporarily weak. I really admire you, Mr. Amon. Yan smiled helplessly. We just ran out of strength for a moment, and you performed such a trick, but you were still fine. Franco looked at Amon, who was approaching. The shadow left by the purple giant just now made him tremble with his legs, but he still stiffened his neck and said, "Humph. Although you are scary, I'm not afraid of you." Looking at his inconsistency, Amon chuckled and said, "You will be a substitute later, and I will give you a chance to go on stage." Then he looked at Sun Boyuan again. "Teacher Sun will still be the instructor of our team, but I don't want something like this to happen again. Is there a problem?" "No," Sun Boyuan said in a low voice without any arrogance. Chapter 78, Fairy Herb Illustrations. Most of the members of Amon's team worked hard to participate in the competition, in order to show themselves on that stage, win honors, and thus win better development opportunities. As long as it does not affect himself, Amon does not mind helping them and giving them convenience. He is not interested in taking action in every game, and plans to leave most of the events to the team members and only be responsible for the defense point. He originally wanted to take this opportunity to understand the level of the team members, but he did not expect Yan Jin and Yan to give him such a big surprise point. A martial soul fusion skill directly upgraded the battle to the point where the rest of the people could not intervene. Although Amon could also interrupt them, he was not going to use his weird skills in this battle. Only the parties involved could experience the silent horror, and in this battle, he wanted to use intuitive and powerful skills to achieve an overwhelming victory. Therefore, facing the martial soul fusion skills of Yan Jin and Yan, he directly used Rommel's barrier martial soul to build a giant to deal with it. Then two knives ended the fast neatly, so that others had no chance to take action at all. Although they failed to understand the true level of Alia and others, the display effect was significant. The arrogant Sun Boyuan became like a quail. Earl Ross stopped, and Principal Zhang Yuming also handed over the power of the participating team to Amon. "I'm sorry, Amon. The old man asked me to do this. I thought he had discussed it with you." Yan Jin lowered his head and said apologetically. Vidal and Alia's hearts sank. They forced Rommel without Amon's consent, which was undoubtedly a challenge to the captain's prestige. In fact, before clearly expressing their support for Franco, they had communicated, and Yan Jin's attitude made them mistakenly think that Amon acquiesced to this matter. Amon pinched his glasses and whispered, "If you do something wrong, you have to pay the price. Although the price of this matter will be paid for you, I don't want it to happen again." That evening, Amon came to the Wuhan Hall. Go up to the second floor and knock on the door of Walter's office. "Please, come in." Seeing that it was Amon who came in, Walter showed a somewhat helpless smile. Amon said with a smile, "Mr. Walter, won't you give me an explanation?" Walter sighed slightly. "This is not my idea. I just gave the substitute quota to the Rhodes family. I reminded them that, if they want the position of the regular player, they should discuss it with you." Walter concealed the existence of Seraph and said half truthfully, "I didn't expect them to bypass you and directly snatch it through this means." Amon sat down on the chair opposite Walter. "Franco is the person you chose, so I will keep his substitute position for him." Since Amon revealed that he was offended and expressed his cooperative attitude, Walter had to express something. "This is a tacit understanding they have developed for a long time. You want this? I found it for you." Walter hooked his finger. A heavy book flew out from the bookshelf and came to Walter's hands along the silk thread. He handed the book to Amon, who took it with a smile. The cover is made of cowhide, and it feels cool and soft to the touch. Although it is very simple, it is well made. After opening it, the ink inside is still new, and it is obvious that it has not been copied for a long time. The book has no name, and it records the information about fairy grass that Amon is currently very interested in. It not only records in detail the shape characteristics of various fairy grasses, but also the picking methods, taking methods, and the effects of taking them. This fairy grass illustration book is very precious in a sense. It is the research accumulation of generations of the Pio clan, but from another perspective, it is meaningless, because fairy grass is rare, and most people will hardly encounter one in their lifetime. "I am very curious, where did you know the name Yang Washang?" Walter's eyes were a little scrutinizing. Amon smiled. "This is my secret. A good cooperative relationship is based on leaving a certain amount of space for each other. Okay, I won't explore this point, but you'd better not mention this name again. This is my advice. Walter's tone was slightly serious. Amon touched the bottom edge of his glasses with his finger, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. I know, Yang Wuxiang is the younger brother of Yang Wudi, the patriarch of the Piao clan. He is also a master of poison. He surrendered to the Wuhan Hall after being captured. The poison of Emperor Zhu Yi came from Yang Wuxiang, or it was the formula he provided. This means that he is likely to work under Qian Ringsu. Walter warned me not to mention this name. Does it mean that he also has a certain connection with Qian Ringsu, who disguised as Zuking, knows the importance of Yang Wuxiang, and is afraid that the conspiracy will be exposed? Amon guessed secretly in his heart. The two looked at each other in silence, and time seemed to freeze for a few seconds. Walter broke the silence. The target of Yan Jin's fourth soul ring has been found. Do you want to come with us? Amon wanted to refuse, but when he thought of his many clones who had nothing to do, he changed his words. Okay, let's take a look together. I'm also looking forward to her growth. The location is in the Sunset Forest. There are many fire-attributed soul beasts there, Walter said calmly. Sunset Forest. What a coincidence. Amon stroked the cover of the immortal herb atlas and said with a smile, when do we leave? The day after tomorrow. After returning to his residence, Amon threw the atlas to another clone to learn, took off his coat and hung it on the hanger, sat on the sofa and gently rubbed his eyebrows. Dealing with Walter seemed easy, but it was actually very mentally exhausting. Every word he said needed to be carefully considered to think about whether there was a deeper intention. He glanced at the original body, who was leisurely drinking coffee on the balcony, and couldn't help muttering, "You are too relaxed." The original body. Amon turned the chair and said calmly, "Would you like a cup? It tastes good." Have you reached the predetermined goal for your practice time today? As a hard-working Amon individual, I need to urge you to seize the time and not be lazy. Amon, who had just returned, got up and poured himself a cup. A moment of relaxation is for better practice. Combining work and rest is the right way. If possible, I would like to exchange with you. The mumbling during meditation is really annoying. The original body. Amon put the cup on the coffee table, mumbling, "Is the situation serious? I don't want to see a crazy original body." Of course. Amon's original body paused for a long time before continuing, "Not serious. The underlying logic of this world is orderly, without the madness and chaos of the mysterious world." The original body. Amon closed his eyes and began to share the scene seen by Amon, who was reading the fairy grass illustration book. He whispered, "Fairy grass. I hope there is what I want." Chapter 79. Douluo. In the dark forest, three people walked slowly. One of them wore white clothes with gold patterns, one was all red, and the other wore a pointed soft hat and a black classical robe. It's been half a month, and we haven't found that guy called Flame King Dragon. Could it have flown away? Yan Jin asked. The intelligence of the spirit hall showed that there was a Flame King Dragon in the Sunset Forest, but only a rough idea was known, and the location of its nest was not locked. The Flame King Dragon is a winged, flying soul beast with a very wide range of activities. Even the entire Sunset Forest may be its hunting ground, so it is not easy to find it. The three of them have been wandering in the forest for half a month. Except for a pile of fresh feces suspected to be discharged by the Flame King Dragon found by Amon by the river, there are no other clues. It's unlikely. Although the Flame King Dragon can fly, they prefer to build nests and settle in a suitable place rather than migrate around. The concentration of fire element in the Sunset Forest is very high, and the food is abundant, which is the environment that the Flame King Dragon likes. Walter explained. Be patient. It took me a long time to find a beast. It's normal not to meet a soul beast like the Flame King Dragon that can move at high speed and has a wide range of activities for 1 or 2 months. Amon said with a smile. Oh. Yan Jin nodded. Her first and second soul rings hunted slimes, which had a limited range of activities and could be found without much effort. The third soul ring of the flowing flame lizard was tracked by Kari 24 hours a day until she reached level 30 and hunted immediately after she came out of retreat. So her impression of hunting soul rings was a bit biased, and she underestimated the difficulty. of finding a soul beast that fits perfectly. The one accompanying Yan Jin and Walter was not Amon's original body, but a clone with a similar personality. There are many soul beasts of high age in the Sunset Forest, which is not safe. There are also moody guys like Douluo. It's not that he wants to hunt soul rings himself. Amon will naturally not take risks, unless it is necessary, even if the risk is small. His original body is in a small town dozens of kilometers away from the forest. Through the transmission of mental connections of his clones, he closely monitors the progress in the forest. In addition to the clones that accompanied Walter and Yan Jin, there were a large number of Amons scattered throughout the forest, searching for traces of the yin-yang eyes of ice and fire. The original book pointed out that the yin-yang eyes of ice and fire were in a valley in the Sunset Forest. The valley was blocked by Douluo's poison formation, and there were soul beasts of at least 1,000 years in the periphery. The area of the Sunset's forest was not very large, and there would not be too many 10,000-year soul beasts. The 1,000-year soul beasts were already at the top of the food chain. Therefore, Amon's clones placed the main search location in the area near the center of the forest. And Amon saw an area surrounded by a faint dark green poison barrier. After he passed the message to others, the Amons quickly discussed and communicated, and finally made a decision. Let the Amon who discovered the poison barrier go in and take a look. If he is not dead, he will carefully explore the situation inside. If he is dead, the Amons will remember his contribution to all Amons. Amon raised his right hand, stroked his monocle, and said TSK, and walked towards the poison barrier area reluctantly. He activated his soul power to condense into a sphere that covered his entire body as a defense against the poison barrier. When he came into contact with the light green poison barrier, Amon found that the speed of his soul power consumption increased slightly, indicating that the poison barrier had an erosive effect on the materialized soul power. The road ahead was getting steeper and steeper. Amon condensed his soul power at the bottom of his feet and climbed up at a constant speed. When he reached the top of the mountain, he found that there was an inverted cone-shaped valley in front of him, and the top of the mountain where he was the edge of the valley. At this moment, the consumption of the soul power shield had become normal, indicating that there was no poison gas around. Amon dispersed the shield and stared ahead. Hot arrows from the bottom of the valley, with a bit of sulfur smell. Everything was in line with the description of the original book, and Amon was basically sure that this was the valley where the yin-yang eye of ice and fire was located. Heh. Good luck. He jumped down. Every few distances, a pedal formed by the condensation of materialized soul power would be generated under his feet, and he walked from the top of the mountain to the bottom, as if he was stepping on air. He looked around like a thief, looking for the fairy grass, and checking whether the original owner was at home. A terrifying soul pressure suddenly descended, and Amon's body sank, and quickly returned to normal. He turned around, and looked at the source of soul power. TSK. I knew it wouldn't be so smooth. It seems that the idea of stealing the fairy grass and running away has failed. Amon muttered in his heart. Not far behind him, an old man with green hair, green pupils, and green nails, who looked a little unkempt, was staring at him, his eyes cold and evil like a venomous snake. Amon looked normal, took off his hat, and pressed it on his chest, and bent down slightly. Good day, Your Majesty. The poisoned Douluo, seeing that Amon was completely unmoved by his title Douluo's momentum, Douluo's eyes condensed slightly, and asked in a cold tone with a hint of murderous intent, who are you? My name is Amon, I'm a student, and I'm here to make a deal with you. Amon chuckled and said, trade? Haha, what kind of deal can a little kid make with me? Douluo smiled coldly. Amon didn't argue much, just uttered one sentence, you are poisoned. Douluo laughed. It's really ridiculous. I'm poisoned? Do you really understand the meaning of the title of poisoned Douluo? Amon still had a faint smile on his face. Did I say anything wrong? Don't you know it yourself? The pains you suffered on rainy days fake. Do you really have no guesses in your heart? Or do you have a deduction, but you just can't accept it in your heart and deceive yourself? Amon didn't remember the specific description of Douluo's poisoning symptoms in the original book. He just vaguely remembered that it seemed to occur on rainy days, similar to some arthritis, so what he said was a bit vague. Douluo's face changed. The secret of his poor health was revealed. He was murderous and his eyes became colder. He considered whether to kill and silence him. Amon adjusted the height of the brim of his hat and continued, "You want to kill me? Can you be sure that, if you kill me, no one else will know your secret? Will I come to you directly without any preparation? You sure that after I die, the backup I arranged will not spread your secret? Don't you have any enemies? After they know the secret, won't they take advantage of your poor condition to kill you? Would you like to listen to me first? The purpose of my coming here, wait until I finish and then make a decision. It won't take you much time. Then just tell me, what are you here for?" Douluo heard the hidden threat from Amon, and his eyes became colder. Amon curled the corners of his mouth, revealing a faint smile. As long as he was willing to listen to him, the passive effect of swindler would work. This is a very obscure mental influence, which only makes people feel that his words are more credible, and will not change the way others think. Just like a good face, decent clothes, and polite behavior, it increases others' subconscious favorability towards him, and even Amon himself cannot be sure whether it is effective. So even the title Douluo, whose strength far exceeds that of Amon, now can hardly escape its influence. Chapter 80 Detoxification Methods. It seems that His Majesty Poison Douluo has admitted the fact that he was poisoned, so on this basis, it is possible for us to continue communication and negotiation. I once spent several years doing an experiment. Do you know a kind of soul beast called the blue phosphorus snake? They are distant relatives of the jade phosphorus snake. Amon did not immediately bring up the transaction content, but instead brought up such a topic. Of course this is a lie, but he is familiar with many theoretical books, and can perfect all kinds of details to make this lie look flawless. Of course I know that this is a snake that is naturally non-venomous, but it can continuously swallow poisonous things to strengthen its toxicity, and eventually become a snake-like soul beast that is not inferior to the green phosphorus snake, or even surpasses it. Douluo said flatly, "Why are you bringing this up?" Douluo was no stranger to the distant relative of the blue phosphorus snake. He even had a soul ring that came from the blue phosphorus snake. The blue phosphorus snake's talent of swallowing poison to enhance its own toxicity is very attractive to him. A poisoned Douluo, I once fed a blue phosphorus snake poisonous food continuously, but of course, the toxicity never exceeded its tolerance limit each time. As a result, the venom of this blue phosphorus snake continued to increase, far exceeding that of similar species of the same year. Finally, it died, poisoned to death. Amon's conclusion made Douluo's pupils shrink, and he vaguely guessed a possibility. After a moment of pause, Amon continued, "Actually, while the blue phosphorus snake is swallowing poison, it is also being corroded by the poison. However, under natural conditions, most blue phosphorus snakes are unable to accumulate so much toxin that they give the illusion that they are not poisoned." Senior Douluo, do you think this is very similar to someone else's situation? Looking at Amon's half-smiling expression, Douluo could no longer remain calm. "Are you saying that I was poisoned because I accumulated too much toxicity and exceeded the upper limit of my ability to withstand it?" Amon stroked his monocle and chuckled. "It may not be exactly the same, but it's roughly the same. Beast martial souls are different from weapon martial souls. They are more closely connected with the human body and have the characteristics of a beast. They are alive and can also be poisoned, and the symptoms of poisoning will be reflected on the holder. There are no people with natural green hair, green eyes, and green males on the Douluo continent. Your current appearance is a manifestation of the accumulation of toxins and their backlash." As a titled Douluo, Douluo naturally understood the characteristics of martial spirits. He knew that what Amon said was true. He seemed to have thought of something, and he suddenly said, "Wait a minute, you said green hair and green eyes are signs of toxin backlash, but Yan, my granddaughter, she was born like this." He tried to retort with this example, but he was trembling inwardly, fearing the worst. A smile appeared on Amon's face again, confirming Douluo's most feared guess. "That means she was also poisoned and inherited the poison you were poisoned by." Douluo could accept his poisoning. In fact, he had already had similar speculations, but he had never been sure. And there is a trace of self-deception thinking that as a poisoned Douluo, who dominates the world with poison, he will not make mistakes in the field he is best at point. But he couldn't accept the fact that Douluo Yan was also poisoned. He didn't want his granddaughter to suffer the same torture that was worse than death. Amon's ruthless words came again. Maybe she is not deeply poisoned. Maybe she is young and the toxin has not exploded yet. But one day in the future, she will probably have your symptoms. And since she was born with it, the symptoms may be more severe. The words more intense made Douluo's heart twitch. He took a deep breath, tried his best to calm down his turbulent mood, and turned his gaze to Amon with a hint of hope. Since you mentioned this to me, then the content of the transaction must be related to this, right? Do you have a way to detoxify me? Amon smiled and replied, of course. No, asshole, are you kidding me? Douluo suddenly burst out with a terrifying momentum, and powerful soul power emerged from his body, forcing the surrounding air to flow outward. Amon condensed a soul shield to resist the oncoming airflow. He said softly, I don't have that deep knowledge in the poison path, but I can provide an idea for detoxification. With your level of poison use, Senior Douluo, it shouldn't be a problem to find a specific and feasible detoxification method. Tell me, what do you want to exchange? Douluo calmed down and asked calmly, I want to take a medicinal herb from here. Let me tell you my thoughts first, and you can judge whether it is feasible. Amon proposed his own way of exchange. Douluo nodded and couldn't help but ask, aren't you worried that I won't admit it? Even though the idea you mentioned is obviously feasible, I refuse to admit it because I don't have to pay for the medicinal herbs. Amon smiled and said, I believe in the credibility of the seniors and the pride in the poisonous path. I will not deny my own path just because of a mere herb. What's more, I have no means to force the seniors to fulfill the deal. You are honest. Douluo laughed. Then let's trade according to the method you said. You tell me your thoughts. If you can, I will allow you to take away a medicinal herb from here. Amon would mention a blue phosphorus snake in order to enhance his persuasiveness through constant truth, maximize the passive effect of the scammer, increase Douluo's trust in himself, and thus control the rhythm in his own hands. Finally, the fact that Douluo Yan was also poisoned was pointed out, turning passivity into initiative, making Douluo the one who wanted to trade more. This is also because Amon doesn't have many chips in his hand. He doesn't have Tang San's method of using poison, and he only knows a feasible detoxification idea in the original work. It is not easy to turn the idea into a practical detoxification method. His idea is to be used in exchange for a medicinal herb, which can only be said to be a bit reluctant. Although Douluo didn't know the true value of these fairy grasses, he also understood that they were definitely extraordinary. Thank you for your generosity. Amon began to explain his thoughts. As I said just now, senior, you were poisoned because of the poisoning of the martial spirit, and it was the feedback of the martial spirit. If your martial spirit was a dead object like a weapon spirit, you wouldn't have such trouble. So we can find something that is similar to the weapon soul, closely connected with you, but different enough to carry your toxins. Use it to bear the toxins in your body, guide all the toxins into it, close enough to himself, but different enough and strong enough. Douluo thoughtfully looked at each other and said in unison, Soulbone. Chapter 81. Amon also has love. It seems that Senior Douluo has understood this idea. Amon smiled. Douluo had a sudden feeling of seeing the sun through the clouds. He did not hide his inner joy and laughed heartily. Ha ha ha. So that's what happened. Yes, it's that simple. He nodded to Amon. Yes, your method made me enlightened. Although my body has been integrated with the toxins because I have been practicing poison skills for too long, it would be suicide to force the toxins into my soul bones. But Yan can. Her cultivation is still shallow, so as long as she finds a soul bone, she can easily solve this problem. Very well. You go pick out the herbs. I will keep my promise. Douluo waved his hand, indicating to Amon that he was free, and then he just stood there and started thinking. Following this line of thinking, reasoning about the specific steps to solve his own problem, Amon pinched the upper and lower edges of the monocle with his right index finger and thumb respectively, and sketched a smile. He began to wander around the valley. The most eye-catching thing is naturally the oval pool located in the center of the valley. The Eye of Ice and Fire. The milky white spring water and the vermilion spring water each occupy half of the pool. They are clearly separated and do not infringe on each other. The milky white side exudes an aura of extreme cold, sending a bone-chilling chill, while the vermilion side is covered in extreme heat. Just getting close to it makes people feel as if their bodies are about to burn. Covering his whole body with a soul shield, Amon approached the water pool. Through the dense water vapor, he saw various precious herbs scattered around the ice and fire eyes. There are several kilograms of snow silkworms, an unusually large cinnabar lotus, and a pink fragrant kilo fairy, growing in the center of the yin spring, with white octagonal shapes and an ice crystal-like center. Atanus ice grass grows in the center of Yanquin, looks like a cabbage, and has a fiery red fire apricot. He scanned the plants over and over again. Most of them were recorded in the fairy grass illustrated book Walter gave him, and a few were not recorded. After searching for a few times, Amon finally selected the target. It was a dark purple, lotus leaf shaped herb with a pattern like a human face on the leaves, exuding black smoke, and looked quite strange and ominous. Soul reinforcing grass, as the name suggests, can make people's souls stronger. It cannot directly strengthen the soul as a whole, but it can greatly enhance the soul's ability to resist blows, making it less susceptible to injury when it confronts others at the mental and soul levels. For Amon, it has another more important effect, increasing the number of Amon. What has always restricted the growth of Amon's number is that when the insect of time is separated, a part of the soul must also be split to carry consciousness. Although the divided soul will spontaneously complete itself, it does so very slowly. So much so that Amon is still in the accumulation period and does not dare to sacrifice his clones at will. After taking soul strengthening grass, the soul becomes tougher, and the soul share required to carry consciousness can naturally be smaller. Originally, Amon needed to divide at least half, that is, 5% of his soul, to be able to carry a complete consciousness, but this fairy grass can reduce it to 4%, 3%, or even lower. Of course, further reducing the soul share of the clone will cause the clone's cultivation speed to become slower, but it doesn't matter. Amon's clone never cultivates independently, and the soul power level is directly brushed up by breaking through the big stage bug and absorbing soul rings. After determining the primary target, he did not rush to take it down, but walked towards another fairy grass. It was a white flower the size of a palm, shaped like a peony, without grass leaves. On the white flower, there were several patches that looked like bloodstains. Lovesickness, red, even among the immortal grasses around the ice and fire eyes, is second to none. If it doesn't get its approval, even with the soul power of the title Douluo, it can't be destroyed. In the original work, when Douluo wanted to touch it, he was rejected by it with golden red light. Amon squatted down and reached out to touch its petals. There was no golden red light shining, and there was no need to spit out the essence and blood from Xiao Wu's heart. When Xiao Wu gained his approval, Amon just touched it smoothly. A smile appeared on his face. Sure enough, lovesick will never reject a lover. This Amon clone is considered senior among all Amons, carrying nearly 20% of the soul share. He separated 1% of his soul and half of his soul power in the palm of his hand. A translucent worm with 12 rings and a starry sky-like color appeared. The worm of time turned into a stream of light and disappeared into the heartbreaking red. On one petal, there was a darker white circle. Since he did not spit out his heart essence and blood, Amon did not become the master of lovesickness red, but the grass jelly itself did not resist him, so the parasitism was very smooth. After doing all this, he walked to the soul solidifying grass and pulled it out of the soil simply and roughly. Compared with those fairy grasses that require special techniques to pick, soul guarding grass seems to have no appearance. The moment it was pulled out, the soul guarding grass let out a strange cry like a baby. Amon did not care about this strange situation, wrapped it in soul power, and stuffed it into his arms. Then, his eyes wandered between fire apricot, coxcomb phoenix sunflower, and earth dragon pumpkin, thought for a while, and made a decision. Senior. Douluo, I have made my choice. Amon walked to Douluo, who was still in deep thought, and said. Douluo used his mental power to scan the area. He remembered every herb around the yin-yang eye of ice and fire very clearly. After confirming that Amon had indeed only taken one, he nodded gently. Very good. It seems that you did not do anything you shouldn't have done, Douluo. Bo's dark green pupils looked at Amon, and his murderous intent was sometimes visible. Although he agreed to the deal and gave Amon a herb, he did not promise not to kill him. Amon's previous threat also made him feel uneasy, and seeing so many precious plants here, letting him leave, was a hidden danger after all. However, it seemed not so good to kill him. First, the other party did give a feasible idea, and second, the so-called backhand might explode, leaking the news that he was poisoned, and his combat power was only 1/10 of that on rainy days, since Amon and Douluo had only spent a short time together, and did not discuss pharmacology with him like Tangson in the original novel, and they did not form a friendship of both teacher and friend. Douluo's attitude was not so kind. Douluo Bo was silent for a long time, and still could not make a decision. The atmosphere between the two gradually became solemn. Sensing Douluo's hesitation, Amon suddenly chuckled and said again, Senior Douluo, do you want to make another deal with me? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 80 to the Secret Price. Trade? What else do you have in mind? Douluo asked with interest. He expected Amon to bring him some more inspiration. But Amon shook his head. This time, what I want to trade is not an idea, but a soul bone. Are you ready to give your granddaughter a soul bone? Speaking of this, Douluo frowned. Soul bones are not so easy to get, even for him, a titled Douluo. And for Douluo Yan's future, it would be better to get her a 10,000-year soul bone, which is even more rare. Soul bone, do you have it? Douluo asked without much expectation. No, Amon answered directly, but you can have it. Senior Douluo, you should know that the champion prize of this soul master competition is 3 10,000-year soul bones, right? I am confident that I can win the championship. I will use one of the soul bones and exchange it for another herb. How about it? You, a soul sect? Douluo had a hint of sarcasm on his face. Just now, Amon deliberately revealed a trace of soul power fluctuation, although his clone was only level 30, and it became even lower after splitting the time worm. But the first soul ring can release the stored soul power expressiveness at the right time to create a false impression for others. Well, my team is very strong, senior. Please give me a herb first, and I will give you the soul bone after we win the championship. To ensure that I will fulfill my promise, you can poison me. It will take effect in 2 years, and it will kill you without an antidote. Amon's tone was calm, but his eyes deliberately revealed a hint of madness that only gamblers would have. After a brief pause, he continued, let's bet once. I will use my life to bet that my team can win the championship, and the senior will use the herb paid now to bet that he can harvest soul bones in the future. In the eyes of those who don't know the true value of immortal grass, they are obviously far less precious than soul bones. Which academy are you from? Northern Advanced Soul Master Academy. When Douluo heard about this unknown academy, he wanted to refuse. He knew how powerful the golden generation of the spirit hall was, but he changed his mind and agreed. If he agreed to this deal, he could poison this kid legitimately. He would be controlled by me, so he would not easily reveal the matter of the medicine garden. With this thought, Douluo smiled. Okay, this is what you said. I will poison you. If you can't give me a soul bone, I don't want your life. You just need to help me study poisons later. He took out a green pill and handed it to Amon. This is the 7 insects and 7 stars grass, which is made from a mixture of 7 poisonous insects and 7 poisonous grasses. You need to take the antidote once a year to delay the onset. Amon took the pill without hesitation and swallowed it directly. As an Amon clone, he voluntarily sacrificed for Amon as a whole. Very good. Douluo nodded with a smile and handed another red pill to Amon. This is the antidote. If you take it when the poison attacks in 1 year, it will delay the time for 1 year. 2 years later, you must come here to find me, otherwise you will die. Also, you must not tell anyone what you saw in my medicine garden after you go out, otherwise, you can't even think about getting the antidote. The key to this transaction is not the soul bone, but Amon needs to give a reason to let himself be controlled by Douluo, so that Douluo can let him go with confidence and bring the fairy grass back to the original body point. As for the antidote or not, as a clone, would I care about this? And whether I can exist for a year is a question. Amon's clone secretly complained. You can go and choose the herbs and leave immediately after choosing. Don't disturb me while I study the detoxification method. Douluo waved his hand with some disdain. Amon walked to the yin-yang eye of fire and ice, used the materialized soul power to transform into a pair of hands, and picked up the earth dragon gourd, which was prepared for Yan Jin. In fact, among the 3 fire apricot delicate chew, coxcomb phoenix sunflower, and earth dragon gourd, fire apricot delicate chew is the most suitable for Yan Jin. The fire poison that is violent and fierce for ordinary people is actually an excellent tonic for Yan Jin, who has a magna martial spirit. Among the latter two, coxcomb phoenix sunflower is too mild in medicinal properties and is not as thick and fierce as earth dragon gourd. Yan Jin's fighting style has a tendency to work hard to create miracles, and earth dragon gourd is more suitable. As for why he didn't give her fire apricot delicate chew, it was naturally because it was to be left for Tangsun. In secret, Amon's god-making ceremony requires replacing the position of that person in the god-making ceremony of others. Although Amon is still unclear will he have such ability in the future, and whether this method is applicable in Douluo, but this does not prevent him from preparing for a rainy day and making such preparations now. There are currently 3 targets available for selection, namely Bibidong, Kanrinksu, and Tangsun. Among them, Bibidong has grown up and is a contemporary pope of the spirit hall, a powerful person at the level of titled Douluo, whose level is likely to be close to level 99, is not a target that can be easily planned. Kanrinksu disguised as Prince Zuking, with 2 titled Douluo guarding by his side, Xiaizu and Shilong, many soul masters under him, and Kandao Liu, a near god strongman behind him, is not a good choice either. Only Tangsun in the early stage has a clear growth trajectory and is still weak. Although he has a Tang Heo guarding him, Tang Heo is only one person after all, and it is impossible for him to watch him all the time, so he is the easiest to control. And as long as he gets the Hanhei Kyang can cover, he can delay or promote his progress in becoming a god. On the whole, Tangsun is the most ideal ritual material for Amon. Amon can't leave the ready-made materials unused and go to the trouble of cultivating himself. Therefore, it is necessary to try to keep Tangsun's growth trajectory in the original work. If there is a problem in any link, it will be a troublesome thing for Amon. However, Amon will also properly control Tangsun's growth progress. If he feels that he grows too fast and is too strong, he will suppress him. If he grows too slowly, he will give him a certain motivation, including but not limited to his lover being seriously injured and dying, being hunted, his friends being killed, etc. And some opportunities that can improve his strength. Tangsun is only about level 30 now, and Amon doesn't need to be vigilant and suppressed. Of course, focusing on Tangsun does not mean completely giving up the other 2 options. There is a possibility of mistakes in the plan and the possibility of failure in the ritual. The more opportunities to try, the better. Amon used a soul shield to cover the earth dragon gourd to prevent the smell of the medicine from attracting soul beasts. Then, he wrapped the big gourd with a piece of cloth and threw it over his shoulder. Senior Douluo, I'm leaving first, Amon informed. Let's go. Don't bother me. Amon raised his hand and stroked his monocle. With a satisfied smile on his face, he stepped on the soul petal condensed in the air and jumped out of the valley. Before leaving, he looked back and stared at the valley for a moment. It's time to come. You must take this gift of fate well. Chapter 83 Flame Dragon. When Amon walked out of the canyon, where the ice and fire eyes were, there was already another Amon waiting outside. This is a gathering of many insects of time. Amon, who came specially to escort the fairy grass. Here, Amon, who walked out of the canyon, carried the cloth bag on his shoulder in front of him, took out the soul stabilizing grass wrapped in soul power from his arms, and handed the two to the newcomer. Amon, thank you for your hard work. Amon nodded and took the fairy grass, in order to gather strength to the greatest extent, and ensure that the grass jelly can be returned safely. Amon, who serves as the signal base station, also gathered together, so they lost contact with the main body. Leave 4 Amon behind, and monitor the movements in the valley. This is the last instruction given by the main body. Converging. Amon looked at Amon, who had merged with him, with a smile. 3 streams of light flew out of his body and merged into the latter's body. This Amon, who brought out the fairy grass, opened his mouth but stopped talking. I'm sure we must all be clones that the main body doesn't want to see. Amon's voice sounded in his heart. Yes, this is the persecution of the clone. Amon complained. Obviously, we are all components of his personality. Without us, this part of his personality would be dispersed to the rest of Amon. It's because of your character that the main body will keep you here, Amon said as he brought out the fairy grass. Monitoring the valley, where the ice and fire eyes are located, is definitely a high-risk job. Not only do you need to avoid the powerful soul beasts around you, you also have to guard against being discovered by Douluo. When Amon splits his clones, he cannot completely control each Amon's personality, and can only roughly determine its tendencies among all Amon clones. The closer the personality is to the ontology, the higher the value. Of course, there is no Amon that is completely consistent with the ontology, which will confuse the subject's status and those who were left behind. Except for the poisoned Amon, we're all more out of the box and relatively less valuable. Although if one of the Amons dies, his personality will be dispersed to all the clones, but this does not prevent the Amons from arranging dangerous jobs for them. Aren't you also left behind? The purpose of my stay is to preside over and supervise you to complete the task properly. Amon, who brought out the fairy grass, had a touch of helplessness in his tone. Oh, because you were poisoned, your value has been greatly reduced. This is the truth. This is really a sad story for Amon. There was Amon who didn't care about his existence at all, and he laughed at the poisoned Amon with a fun-loving attitude. Shut up. Bye. A small stream. Yan Jin looked at the sound of water reflecting the firelight on the water. The firelight came from a fiery red soul beast on the other side of the stream. It looked like a big lion, with wings growing from its back, 2 horns that curved forward from both sides of its head, and 2 sharp fangs protruding from its upper lip. A tail with flames burning at the end swings casually. Its limbs are slender, and the 4 legs are also burning with flames. Meow. The soul beast looked at the rock embers on the other side, which was less than the size of its head. With obvious curiosity, Yan Jin tilted her head, remembering the characteristics of the target that Amon had described to her before she came, and shouted excitedly, "Amon, old man, come on, here." As she said that, she had already punched him. Big fire breathing in such a dangerous place. There are naturally many clones of the worm of time in her body. While attacking, the time insect had already merged with her martial soul, improving her soul power level and continuously replenishing it. Be careful, this guy must be over 10,000 years old, estimated to be around 13,000 years old. Amon's voice rang in her mind. In other words, the Soul Emperor level. I feel like I can beat him, Yan Jin said with some confidence. However, the next second, her expression suddenly changed, because the magma bombarded the opponent, only making him take a few steps back, and there was no injury at all. It is extremely resistant to high temperatures. Yan Jin has always been able to fight across a large stage by relying on the terrifying destructive power of the magma spirit, but now facing the Flame King Dragon, the effect is greatly reduced. Help, old man, I can't beat you. She made a quick decision and ran away. The Flame King Dragon shook its head and was stunned when Yan Jin punched it on the head. Although it is not too old, there are very few people who dare to provoke it in the Sunset Forest. After the initial shock, it reacted and let out an angry roar. Meow. Ow. It spread its wings and instantly flew over the rock embers, opening its mouth to spit out cherry red flames. Sensing the danger, Yan Jin used his second soul skill, soul power ejection, and blessed it on himself. He jumped several meters away and avoided the flames. She felt a strong threat from the cherry red flames. Amon, it's so strange. It doesn't feel very hot, but it is very dangerous. She frowned and asked in her mind, this is the ability of the Flame King Dragon. It can control the flame and burn the target it wants to burn without harming others. Amon replied, is this the target ability of my next soul ring? Yes. Look carefully at its flames. Yan Jin dodged while observing the cherry red flames, and found that except for the flame that was sprayed out at the beginning, the Flame King Dragon did not spray again. But the flames have always existed. They are like possessing intelligence, forming fire snakes that rush towards Yan Jin. Wherever the flames pass, not even a blade of grass is ignited. What's the use of this? Yan Jin was puzzled. Amon explained, the flame can burn objects because heat energy is transferred from high temperature objects to low temperature objects, and the low temperature object cannot withstand the transferred heat and will be destroyed. The flame of the Flame King Dragon will not burn objects outside its target, which means that heat energy is not transferred and energy is not lost, which allows its flame to exist all the time with almost no consumption. Yan Jin still didn't understand. Amon continued, if you gain this ability, then in the future, as long as the magma you create does not touch the target you want to attack, there will be no heat loss, and it can exist all the time without consuming much soul power to maintain it. The magma produced by Yan Jin is consumed in maintaining it, and this consumption is proportional to the volume of the magma summoned. If it is just covering the fist and using close combat, the consumption is naturally small enough to be ignored, but once the magma is produced on a large scale and a saturation attack is carried out, the consumption for maintenance will become very huge. I understand. In short, you have to absorb its spirit ring with the idea of gaining the ability to control heat loss, right? Yes. Amon did not continue to speak. As for whether Yan Jin really understood, he was not sure. Based on past experience, Yan Jin did not understand, and did not need to understand. She was obedient enough, and that was enough. Chapter 84 Heat Blockage. When Yan Jin was fighting with the Flame King Dragon, Walter had already arrived, but he did not rush to attack, but hid behind a tree to observe. Not only was he observing Yan Jin's performance when facing an opponent that was far stronger than him, but he was also secretly setting up a dragnet with invisible threads to ensure that the Flame King Dragon could not escape. After all, this is a 10,000-year-old soul beast that can fly. If it flies into the sky, Walter, who is not a flying soul master, will not have a good way to capture it, even if he is a contrap. Meow. The Flame King Dragon howled, waved its right paw, and cherry red flames suddenly exploded. Then, as if a chain reaction occurred, explosions continued, drowning the rock in an instant. A cunning smile appeared on Yan Wanglang's face. While it was controlling the fire attack, it was also spreading tiny flammable dust. When the range was large enough and the prey could not escape, it would detonate it. Since it is a range attack, the damage is not high, but as long as it can hinder the opponent's actions for a moment, it is enough. It lunged forward. As soon as Yan Jin untied the hemispherical rock shield, he saw the Yan Wang dragon rushing towards him like a hungry tiger pouncing on food. Just as he was about to condense the lava giant soldier for a desperate fight, he saw the body of Yan Wanglang suddenly stop in midair, with panic and fear on his face. The interweaving of silk threads, which is imperceptible to the naked eye, restricts its movement. There seemed to be an invisible sharp blade passing by. A pair of wings fell from the sky, and the Flame King Dragon let out a wail. Later, its limbs were also cut off, its mouth was blocked, and blood marks appeared on its body. Within a moment, the dying Flame King Dragon slid down the silk thread and landed in front of Yan Jin. Walter walked out from behind the trees with a smile. Very good performance. Now, kill it quickly and absorb the soul ring. This was the first time Yan Jin saw Walter take action, with a hint of fear on his face. Old man, how did you do it? Why did the big cat's body suddenly fall apart just now? Walter spread his right forearm flat, and a white ball of wool appeared in his hand, which looked like the kind ordinary people used to knit clothes. He explained to Yan Jin, "This is my martial soul, the thread ball. Combined with my soul skills, it can create extremely thin threads invisible to the naked eye for attack. Originally, these fire-type soul beasts were my nemesis, because the threads are easily ignited, but I'm a soul Douluo after all, and its foundation is still a little lacking." "Oh, that's it." Yan Jin nodded, formed a long sword with magma, and then activated his third soul skill. To lower its temperature point, she used the solidified stone sword to chop off the head of Yan Wanglang. A black soul ring emerged from the bloody corpse, emitting a dark light. Yan Jin waved to the soul ring and used her soul power to pull it closer to her martial soul. Then, she sat down cross-legged and began to absorb the soul ring. The surging energy and resentment about death came like a flood, but with the help of the worm of time, this did not cause any trouble. The energy was diverted and was stuck at the limit that Yan Jin could bear. The resentment was intercepted and drowned in endless gibbering. A few hours later, Yan Jin opened his eyes with a hint of joy on his face. "Haha, I succeeded." Amon, who was sitting on the tree trunk, stroked his monocle with his hand. "I have created such good conditions for you. If you can't absorb it anymore, you might as well go home and farm." Walter was not as calm as Amon, and the joy on his face was no less than Yan Jin. Okay. The fourth soul ring lasts for 10,000 years, and the future is limitless. Child, what kind of abilities have you gained?" Walter asked. "As Amon estimated, my fourth soul ring is a permanent ability, which allows my magma to only burn the target I want to burn. Hey, old man, you don't have to worry about me causing havoc and sending you a bunch of bills again." With that said, Yan Jin released his martial spirit, covered his right hand, and grabbed Walter's palm. Walter did not dodge, nor did he release his soul power to resist, and just let Yan Jin catch him. He felt like he was holding a ball of mud, with a hint of warmth. Amon jumped off the branch and touched the lava. The warm touch made him understand that Yan Jin's fourth soul ring could not completely prevent the heat loss, but it was so slow that it was almost negligible. The trip to the Sunset Forest ended perfectly. They didn't make any further stops and immediately came to the nearest town, preparing to take a short rest before returning to the Northland Point. As soon as they entered the city, Yan Jin pulled the two of them and rushed to the nearest restaurant. "Serve the dishes. Serve the dishes. Serve all the most delicious ones." Walter looked at her energetic appearance with a kind and helpless smile on his face. Amon's body took over to immortal grasses from his clone's hands. He casually placed the Earth Dragon Golden Melon on the table and picked up the dark purple soul retaining grass and looked at it carefully. He did not eat it directly because the soul refining grass will solidify the soul of the whole body while making the soul tough. If taken directly, it will only cause the death of the eater. It needs to be used with a large amount of soul refining grass at the same time. After taking the soul solidifying grass, consume 1 kilogram of soul refining grass to ensure the minimum flow of soul power. The next day, he consumed 1 kilogram of soul refining grass again, which made the slow flow of soul power smoother. On the third day, after consuming 1 kilogram of soul refining grass again, the solidification of soul power was completely resolved, and the flow rate returned to normal. TSK. I still need to get at least 3 kilograms of soul refining grass. Amon stroked his monocle and put the soul refining grass into the space ring. Northern City. City Lord's mansion. A man in a red dress with large golden patterns and a neatly trimmed mustache above his lips and chin was stopped by the guards at the door. "Asshole, do you know who I am? I'm Count Ross. How dare you stop me?" Garland said angrily. "Sorry, Count Ross, the City Lord is not here for something. Please go back." Holmes walked out of the mansion and said politely but firmly, "It's Q-Barrow deliberately avoiding me?" Garland's tone was slightly slower. "Of course not. The City Lord has been away for more than half a month. If there is any official business, you can tell me directly, and I will discuss it with the Chief Tax Officer and the City Lord's housekeeper." Holmes said neither servile nor arrogant. After a pause, he continued, "Of course, if it is within my authority, I will definitely not shirk it." Humph. Garland did not continue to pester and walked away unhappily. "Captain Holmes, I heard that Earl Ross has always been inclined towards the Spirit Hall. What does he want to see the city lord for? The captain of the guards behind Holmes asked, pinching his eyes. I don't know. These nobles are not sincere. Who knows what their real stance is? These are not what we should consider. Holmes shook his head and said indifferently. Chapter 85 Eating Melon. The cold moonlight sprinkled on the ground, making the world not seem dark. In the courtyard, the fountain gurgled, and the sound of the water flow was particularly loud in the quiet night. Amon sat on an elegant and luxurious high-backed chair, with his legs crossed, leaning against the back of the chair, and closing his eyes, to take a nap. Yan Jin sneakily opened the door, and poked his head in. Amon, are you looking for me? Looking at her thief-like performance, Amon had a hunch that she had probably done something stupid again. Sure enough, before he could speak, Yan Jin had already revealed his family background. I really didn't mean it this time. Who knew that the two soul masters were so weak? I didn't even use my soul skills. I punched them one by one, and they went to the hospital. Do you think I care about these little things? Amon said calmly. Oh, indeed not. Yan Jin patted his chest, which was beginning to show its outline, and relaxed. What's the matter? How much soul refining grass do you have left? Amon knew that Walter would provide Yan Jin with 1 kilogram of soul refining grass every month to help her practice. This was also the largest expenditure among all Walter's funding. If Yan Jin had more than 3 kilograms, Amon would directly exchange it with her for the Earth Dragon Golden Gourd. If not, he would go to Walter. Although the Earth Dragon Golden Gourd might not reach Yan Jin's hands in the second way, he would not wait for it specially. Yan Jin took out a somewhat old dark red bag from the space ring. This was bought by Amon for her, and she had been using it since the Icewind Junior Soul Master Academy. Hey, look. Yan Jin handed the bulging bag to Amon. I saved it secretly. I thought you might use it. Amon picked up the bag and estimated the weight. The soul refining grass inside was about 4 kilograms. After a moment of silence, he said, then let's exchange. I'll use this to exchange your soul refining grass. He took out the Earth Dragon Golden Melon. In an instant, the room was filled with the fragrance of medicine. Yan Jin felt that her martial soul was ready to move, as if it was instinctively craving it. Just judging from the fragrance, she knew that the quality of this golden melon was definitely far superior to the snow lotus that Walter gave her. Amon, what about you? Yan Jin swallowed his saliva and restrained the desire in his heart. Do you want to exchange? Amon stroked his monocle and said with a chuckle, change. Yan Jin nodded hurriedly and picked up the big melon. Remember to return the small bag to me. Also, how do you eat this thing? Just eat it directly. Your martial spirit is very compatible. Yan Jin did not hesitate and started to eat it immediately. Amon took out the herbs in the dark red small bag and guarded Yan Jin on the side. He extended his soul power outward, covering the entire house and materializing it, then activated the skill of the first soul ring, stealing the soul power expression in the soul power shield, so that Yan Jin's soul power fluctuations when absorbing the Earth Dragon Golden Melon could not be transmitted to the outside world. After several hours, the sky in the east was a fish belly white. The night had passed, and the day had come. Yan Jin finally exited the refining state, opened her eyes, looked at Amon, and said uncertainly, I seem to be level 49. And it seems that it is not far from breaking through to level 50. Before, she had absorbed the soul ring beyond the age limit and her soul power level was already level 43. Now she has increased it by 6 levels by absorbing the Earth Dragon Golden Melon. At this moment, even she herself felt that it was a bit absurd. She had just been promoted to Soul Sect, and it seemed that she could be promoted again immediately. Feeling the power filling her body, she looked at Amon with shining eyes, showing an eager expression. Amon, I remember you seem to be only level 45. I'm higher than you. Amon knew that she was itching again when he saw her like this, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Why do you want to try it? They came to the training ground in the backyard. Vidiel had made some modifications to the property before, and specially added a training ground to satisfy Yan Jin, who was too energetic, so that she would not demolish the house at any time. Boom. The surging soul power emerged from Yan Jin, and the magna martial spirit appeared in his hand, accompanied by rising flames and black smoke, and rolling heat waves spread in all directions. Vidiel suddenly woke up, subconsciously looked out of the window, saw Yan Jin on the training ground, and got into bed again, cursing, "Damn it, early in the morning, why are you making so much noise?" But soon he realized that something seemed amiss, and he hurriedly got up again, feeling Yan Jin's momentum, with doubt in his eyes. Soul sect? It doesn't look like you've just entered the soul sect. Big fire spray. Yan Jin confidently raised his huge lava fist and rushed towards Amon. Amon smiled, stretched out his hand and grabbed forward, using the 4th soul skill he had just obtained, the active part of Fire Thief. Soul skill Steel. He did not activate the 3rd soul skill Insight to cooperate with it, because he wanted to steal Yan Jin's 1st soul skill. He was very familiar with the skill Soul Power Condensation, and the ring number was low, so there was almost no possibility of failure. Yan Jin was horrified to find that his 1st soul skill was dormant and his martial soul began to be out of his control. The huge lava fist disintegrated into a ball, and finally only a thin layer of armor was left attached to the arm, still under her control. How to fight? Yan Jin was dumbfounded. That. She braked suddenly and stopped in front of Amon. Without giving her time to talk nonsense, Amon kicked her in the stomach and kicked her away. Yan Jin slid a long way on the ground, holding his stomach until he stopped at the edge of the training ground. Amon didn't hold back too much. Anyway, Yan Jin had either beaten people or been beaten since he was a child. He grew up being beaten, so he was very tough, and now he had eaten the Earth Dragon Golden Pumpkin, which made him even more resistant to beatings. Yan Jin got up, complained bitterly, and looked at Amon in panic. "What did you do? Why can't I use my soul skills? This is my ability." Amon didn't explain too much. "Don't panic, I can use it in a day." "Oh, so that's it." Yan Jin felt empty in her heart. She felt very uncomfortable that her 1st soul skill could not be used. Without hesitation, she said decisively, "I surrender." Heh. Amon chuckled, not surprised, and returned Yan Jin's skills. Yan Jin felt that the silent soul ring lit up again and could be used again, and the feeling of emptiness in his heart disappeared. "What kind of weird soul skill is this? Why do I feel that all your soul skills are completely different from others?" Yan Jin couldn't help but complain. "But it's very useful, isn't it? By the way, don't tell Walter about the Earth Dragon Golden Good and your soul power level of 49 within a week," Amon warned. "Okay." Yan Jin nodded. Vidiel, who was looking down from his room, held his chin. The 4 bright soul rings of Yan Jin just made him dizzy, and the 4th soul ring was black. Not long ago, he was still complacent about being 38th level and expected to become a soul master before the opening of the soul master competition. At this time, there was a bit of inexplicable loss. Anyone who gets along with such a monster would feel that he was a little bit unpresentable. Chapter 86 Eating Grass. After leaving his clone behind, Amon left Bida's house and came to the place he rented. He used his soul power to seal the house and arranged several clones to guard the surroundings, and then took out the soul fixing grass. As soon as he left the space ring, the soul fixing grass made a strange baby-like cry. The sound was sharp and piercing, and the face on the leaves seemed to come alive, making a painful and twisted expression. Black smoke spread, and a stench with rotten branches and leaves filled the house. Amon TSK, and whispered to himself, "This thing doesn't look decent at all." Without too much scruples, he opened his mouth and swallowed it directly. After swallowing it, he immediately took out the soul refining grass and swallowed it in big mouthfuls, so as not to be unable to move after the effect of the soul fixing grass took effect. After he did all this, he suddenly felt a little cold, and his soul power could not be mobilized, like sticky, coagulating blood. This is because the 1 kilogram of soul refining grass accelerated the flow of soul power. Otherwise, at this moment, his soul power would become his death warrant. Amon closed his eyes. His face was pale, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He felt that his soul was torn and glued together, and then repeatedly beaten by a hammer. After 3 hours, he finally recovered a little ability to move. He gasped, rubbed his eyebrows, got up and walked to the bed. To lie down. The Amons who were guarding on the side also felt dizzy, and even the soul shield was a little unstable. The team leader who was patrolling on the street staggered and did not fall down with the help of his subordinates. What's wrong, Captain? It's okay. Maybe I drank too much yesterday and haven't recovered yet. The guard team leader explained casually. Chores sweeping the floor in the Wuhan hall, supported by a broom, came to the corner and sat down slowly. In the library of BD College, the librarian put down the book and rubbed his eyebrows. The newly hired coachman of the Ross family fell off the carriage. Fortunately, the carriage was parked at the gate of the city lord's mansion and was not moving. Passers-by on the side couldn't help but feel lucky for him. Otherwise, the poor coachman would probably be beaten to death by the bad-tempered count. At this moment, all the clones that could contact Amon's body were more or less affected. There was even an unlucky clone who was enjoying the scenery on the roof and rolled down from a high place, broke his neck, and died unfortunately. His death was a bit ridiculous. 3 days later, Amon recovered from weakness, sensed the state of the clones, and smiled with satisfaction. Not bad. Most of his clones carried their will with the smallest soul share, and their souls were under extreme load. Under the power of the soul-fixing grass, the toughness of the soul was greatly improved, and many Amons felt a sense of relief from the depths of their souls at this time. Only the original body has completed the soul transformation, and the rest are still in the process of continuous and slow transformation, which will take some time to complete. Amon's clones are too many, and the total amount of souls is huge. Even with the power of the fairy grass, it is impossible to change them all at once. However, when thinking of the unlucky clone who was killed by the fall, Amon was speechless and reflected on himself. I was not careful enough this time, and I ignored the impact that the soul transformation of the original body may bring to the clone. In addition, you must also pay attention to this when going to certain dangerous areas and fighting special enemies in the future. If you encounter a bad situation, cut off the contact in time, so as not to implicate the entire Amon group, or be found by the other party through the contact. After all, soul skills are all kinds of strange, and all kinds of them are possible. At this time, a message from a clone caught Amon's attention. Marquis Fekris was assassinated and fell into a coma after being seriously injured. Amon pinched the upper and lower edges of the monocle with his index finger and thumb respectively, and the corners of his mouth slightly raised, revealing a smile. Interesting. In Xiandao City, in the palace, a man wearing a dragon robe and a crown, who looked a little old, was holding the scepter tightly, with uncontrollable anger in his eyes. Arsehole. A real marquis was assassinated in his own territory in broad daylight. Who can tell me what happened? Prince Zuking stepped forward and said calmly, "Father, calm down. Marquis Fekris is a powerful soul emperor. The person who can assassinate him must be even more terrible, although it is also important to catch the murderer. The top priority now is to stabilize the situation in the north as a representative figure of nobles loyal to the royal family. Marquis Fekris's coma will definitely cause turmoil in the north. We have to guard against it." Seoul Palace Emperor Zuyi restrained his anger, but anyone could feel that under this calm surface, there was even more anger. "King, what do you think we should do now?" Emperor Zuyi asked. Zuking held his chin and answered after a little thought. "It should have been time for the Lord of BD City to come back to report on his work. He is to blame for what happened. However, it is not appropriate to change people at this time. The situation in the north is complicated. It is tantamount to changing generals in the middle of a battle to rashly replace unfamiliar people. So, I think that we should send old and steady ministers to form a nominal investigation team to catch the murderer, but actually go to BD City to help Kubero stabilize the situation. After the situation stabilizes, let Lord Kubero return to Xiandao City to explain the situation." Emperor Zuyi nodded slightly, satisfied with Zuking's answer. "Then who do you think is more suitable to go?" "Lord Messiah," Zuking answered confidently without hesitation. "Messiah." Emperor Zuyi pondered for a moment and was about to nod in agreement. At this moment, Prince Zu Crossing suddenly said, "Since the assassin is powerful, why don't we ask Mr. Dugu to go?" "Dubu. Bo. Kyan Ring-Su, who was disguised as Zuking, was alert in his heart, but did not show it on the surface. If Mr. Douluo is willing to go to the north, it would be great, someone reminded. Mr. Douluo said before that he was going to retreat and practice some kind of poisonous skills, so let's not disturb him before he comes out. This Zhu Crossing was a little caught off guard and asked, did he say when he could come out? No. The person who reminded just now answered. Then send Messiah to lead 3 Soul Saint level worshippers to BD City first. After Mr. Douluo comes out of retreat, tell him about this. If he doesn't want to go to BD, don't force him. Emperor Zuyi made a decision point after the meeting. Emperor Zuyi looked at Zuking's departing back with a deep gaze point. After walking out of the palace, 2 figures suddenly appeared behind Zuking. They appeared so naturally, without any sense of abruptness, as if they had always been there. Your Highness, why did you recommend Messiah instead of our people? Zhu asked. Emperor Zuyi is not an idiot. Even for me, the Crown Prince, he is on guard. When he said the word Crown Prince, a faint mockery appeared on his face. The layout of BD has been completed. Next, we just need to wait patiently. The final move will still be made by Xiandao City. Chapter 87, The Northern Plan. In the City Lord's mansion, Goran sat on a chair, waiting for Kubero's arrival. He frowned, with a little nervousness in his expression. Count Ross, I heard that you have come to me several times. Is there anything important? Kubero walked into the meeting room and said in a stiff tone. Seeing Kubero, Goran's pupils shrank for a while. He finally confirmed his guess and whispered, my wife's cousin, Bishop Platinum of Ceres, has been to the Northland City. His martial soul is ghost bug, which is very sensitive to the breath of life. He can feel that the Kubero in front of him has no vitality of a living person. Kubero fell silent and looked at Goran with cold eyes. He suddenly smiled. It seems that you have discovered it, then. Come in and talk. The second voice did not come from Kubero's mouth, but from the room further back. This voice was calm but old, not like the voice of a middle-aged man like Kubero. Kubero's entire body suddenly collapsed, turning into countless threads and pulling away to the back. Goran walked in from a door on the side and saw an old man in a black robe. Walter, one of the 4 platinum bishops of the Spirit Hall. At this moment, he was sitting on the chair that should have been sat by the Lord of the Northland City, holding a teacup in his hand. How did you find out? Walter asked. Goran bowed slightly and replied, I spend more time in the Northland City, and it is easier for me to detect some hidden things than others. Just like Mr. Walter, I knew about your being in the Northland City a year and a half ago. Then I paid more attention to the City Lord's mansion and the Spirit Hall. The City Lord is a soul master who is keen on cultivation. He rarely shows up and doesn't participate in social activities much. This is understandable in itself, but it seems a bit unusual when you, Mr. Walter, are here. In later observations, I found that the time period when the City Lord was in seclusion and did not see people generally overlaps with the time period when you, Mr. Walter, left BD City. The characteristics of your carriage are very obvious. The guards at the city gate can tell by paying a little attention. In addition, when Seraph left, he also gave me some hints. He asked me to take time to visit the City Lord. Walter smiled. The last reason is the key that you can be sure of, right? Yes. Goran nodded in agreement. I don't know when you, Mr. Walter, started. 2 years ago, as early as 2 years ago, there was no City Lord, and I have been handling government affairs. Although he had already guessed it, Walter's answer still frightened Goran. An important official of the Empire disappeared silently, and the power he possessed was secretly occupied by another person for 2 years. How terrible. Goran suppressed his shock and asked, Mr. Walter, what is your purpose? Whether it is Lord Kubero or Marquis Fekris, their unexpected encounters will inevitably arouse the vigilance of the royal family. Because of Sereth's relationship, he is not worried that Walter will take action against him, and directly puts his position on the side of the Spirit Hall. Walter smiled. This is what His Royal Highness the Crown Prince meant. Your Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Goran was slightly stunned. He thought that the relationship between the Spirit Hall and the Empire had reached the point of being at loggerheads. but he did not expect Walter to mention the Crown Prince. Walter explained, "Yes, your Royal Highness the Crown Prince. He is close to the Spirit Hall, and he also believes that the relationship between the Empire and us should not be so tense. There are many people in the Spirit Hall who support the prince, but Fixley only recognizes Emperor Zuai and turns a blind eye to the prince's goodwill and solicitation. We need a northern province loyal to the prince. I have this plan, and it is also a coincidence. Some little guys let me see the opportunity." Little guy. Garland suddenly thought of the team that represented the Northland Academy in the Soul Master competition. "Alia, is Alia the person you arranged? So that's it." Once Marquis Fixley died, she also had the right of inheritance without a designated heir. If she can perform better in the Soul Master competition and win the favor of Emperor Zuai, then she will get the support of the royal family. And Earl Teeksin. Vidiel is the heir of Earl Teeksin, and she is a teammate, so Earl Teeksin will also become her ally. And when she inherits the title of Marquis, she should continue the previous trade agreement between Ironheart territory and Felicis territory, which is what Earl Ironheart is happy to see. In addition, Brandy also won the second place in the individual competition, and will join the team as a substitute. In the next period of time, as long as Alia reaches some agreements with him, it will not be difficult to get the support of his father, Earl Lionheart. Garland showed a look of realization. He understood Walter's plan. Once successful, an alliance consisting of Marquis Felicis, Earl Ironheart, and Earl Lionheart will be formed. Under this alliance, the rest of the nobles in the north can only attach themselves to it. At that time, the entire north will become part of the prince's power. "Do you need me to do anything?" Garland couldn't remain indifferent. Since he knew about the upcoming alliance, he naturally had to participate in it early and couldn't be excluded. Just support Alia at the right time. Whether she can inherit the title of Marquis is still a question, and Vidiel's inheritance is not so stable. Whether they can succeed depends on whether they can achieve results in the Soul Master competition and show amazing talents. Walter smiled faintly, looking confident. Soul Master competition. Garland couldn't help but think of the terrible giant who was full of oppression. He suddenly realized that intervening in the participating teams with tough means and failing to do intelligence work in advance was the stupidest thing he had done during this period. "Amon, is the captain of that team also your man, Mr. Walter?" Garland asked a little nervously. You did do a stupid thing, but don't worry, I have paid the price for you. That little guy is not a simple character." The reason why Walter confessed all this to Goran directly was because it was in his plan. Even if Goran didn't come to him, he would contact Goran at the right time close to the Spirit Hall. His wife is Sereth's cousin, and Count Ross himself is one of Walter's selected allies of Alia. Otherwise, he would not have paid for Goran's mistakes before. They discussed some details again, and it was not until the afternoon that Count Ross got up and said goodbye. After he walked out, Walter looked up. His eyes seemed to penetrate the bricks and tiles and saw the figure standing above. He said lightly, "Since the sound has been revealed, why hide your head and show your tail? I just don't want to disturb your conversation with Count Ross." A man wearing a classical robe, a pointed soft hat, and a monocle on his right eye, jumped off the roof and flipped in from a window on the side. He put his right hand on the lens of his right eye, with a faint smile on his face. Chapter 88. The choice of a 50,000-year soul beast. So there is such a big plan behind this. No wonder Mr. Walter is willing to hunt soul beasts up to 50,000 years old for me. It seems that my cooperation is still very valuable. Amon clapped his hands and said in a slightly exaggerated tone. Walter did not comment. "Don't pretend. I don't believe you didn't notice it at all. If you didn't notice it, you wouldn't be standing here now." For Amon, Walter basically regarded him as his own, so there was not much to avoid. Although it was not stated, in fact, their cooperation had begun since Alia joined. It was this tacit understanding that made Walter recognize Amon's ability and treat him with a more equal attitude. Amon curled his lips and smiled. "Then, can Mr. Walter introduce me? I also hope to be valued by His Royal Highness the Crown Prince." "You don't need to say more about this. I will do it naturally. Selecting talents is also one of my tasks." Walter nodded and did not refuse. By the way, in the Soul Master competition, remember to let Alia perform more and show her excellence as much as possible. I will. This is their stage. I'm just the one who sends them to the stage. Amon told Walter that he would not be so conspicuous that others would not have a sense of existence. After a brief pause, he said again, in fact, I want to discuss with you the distribution of the prizes for the champion of the Soul Master competition. Walter looked a little strange. The competition hasn't even started yet, and you are already thinking about the prizes for the champion. Although Amon and Yan Jin showed enough talent and strength, he was still not optimistic, because the other people in the team were a little weaker than the Wuhan Hall team. Moreover, they don't have enough coordination. It's okay to deal with weaker teams, but once they face a strong team, this weakness will be magnified. Yan Jin is already level 49. Amon said leisurely. Walter's eyes widened. What? Say it again. Amon spread his hands. Yan Jin is level 49. Walter felt that his brain was not enough. Didn't she absorb the spirit ring just a few days ago? You should have more confidence in your apprentice. Amon smiled. You can't be so confident, even if you have confidence. Am I surprised by what I have seen? Obviously, you are the ones with problems. Walter complained in his heart. Are you serious? Walter's voice was a little hurried, and it was difficult to calm down. Compared with Yan Jin, even the golden generation would be eclipsed. Well, she was lucky and ate a dragon good. Amon said casually. Walter's eyes narrowed slightly. He had also seen the fairy grass encyclopedia, but he didn't study it too deeply. No wonder you want the encyclopedia. You already have this rare treasure in your hand. Well, I got 2 plants by chance. I didn't know how to use them, and I didn't dare to eat them randomly. I just ate them a few days ago, and the effect was surprisingly good. Since Amon asked for the encyclopedia before going to Sunset Forest, and he had been moving with them in the forest, Walter didn't doubt that he got the fairy grass in Sunset Forest. What level are you now? Walter asked. Level 45. The effect of the treasure I ate is to enhance mental resistance, and not all herbs have the good effect of Earth Dragon Golden Gourd. Amon replied. Walter looked at Amon with some surprise. He really didn't expect Amon to be willing to share such a precious thing with Yan Jin, and it seemed that he gave her the best one, and his eyes softened a little. He asked with a hint of hope, do you have any more? Amon shook his head. Do you think there will be a lot of such treasures? Walter naturally had some doubts about Amon's words, but when he thought about Amon's lack of soul power, he believed most of it. Mr. Walter, do you still think it's too early to discuss the ownership of the prize? Discussing the distribution of benefits in advance can effectively avoid conflicts afterwards, so the sooner the better. However, Walter never thought that the team of Northland College could defeat the golden generation of Wuhan Hall, so he didn't mention it. But at this moment, he really saw such a possibility, and his expression was a little more cautious. Yan Jin must have one. Of course, I need to choose one first. As for this last piece, Mr. Walter, do you have any intention? Amon's voice was a little tempting. Although the formation of the Northland College team was influenced by Walter, he was not qualified to participate in the distribution of spoils. If he wanted soul bones, he could only get them through trading. I thought you would leave it to Yan Jin's brother. Walter stroked his beard. Amon touched the bottom edge of his monocle with his index finger. Yan Jin will give the snow lotus to Lian. After she has the Earth Dragon Golden Gourd, it is dispensable for her. After all, the more of these rare treasures, the better. What do you want? Walter knew that the soul bone would definitely not be given to him for nothing. Amon's mouth had a slight arc. 50,000-year-old soul beast. But this time the target is a bit tricky, so I think I need to make up the difference. Walter's expression was slightly gloomy. He had already promised Amon to help him hunt 50,000-year-old soul beasts. As long as it was not too outrageous, he would abide by the agreement and help him hunt. And now Amon actually took the initiative to use a 10,000-year-old soul bone to make up the difference, which shows how difficult it would be to hunt the soul beast he chose. Wait. According to his training progress, he can probably reach level 50 before the Soul Master competition, so I have to help him hunt first, and then I can get the soul bone. and whether the soul bone can be obtained depends on whether they can win the championship. Walter reacted, and the price difference seemed not as big as he thought at first. A soul bone that can be obtained and can be cashed immediately after hunting is different from a soul bone that is unknown whether it can be obtained. You are really familiar with this empty-handed trick. Walter chuckled. This can also be regarded as an investment. Mr. Walter, you invest in me in advance and help me hunt difficult soul beasts. Then my strength will be enhanced, and I will be more confident to win the Soul Master Competition Championship, and then give you back with soul bones. It is equivalent to me cashing in part of the championship income in advance, and Mr. Walter helps me cash in this part of the income. If the investment goes smoothly, you can get a rich return. Amon had a smile on his face. He knew Walter would not refuse. A 10,000-year soul bone is very valuable even for a soul Douluo. More importantly, a 10,000-year soul bone can help Walter break through to level 90 with a high probability and become a titled Douluo. Tell me, what kind of 50,000-year soul beast do you want? Walter asked. Amon's tone was a little serious. Mr. Walter, have you heard of the Mermaid Clan? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89, Substitute Player, Mermaids, Sea Soul Beasts. Walter frowned. He had never heard of this kind of existence. Judging from the word fish, it should be a soul beast in the water, and he guessed it was related to the sea. The mermaids are a kind of half human and half soul beast, similar to wolf thieves. Some mermaids can practice like humans. When they break through the level, they need to hunt soul rings, while others are like soul beasts. Amon explained to Walter, half human and half soul beast. Can you get a soul ring if you kill it? Walter asked with some interest. It was also the first time he heard of such a strange existence. Amon replied, it depends on the concentration of soul beast blood in their bodies. If the blood concentration is high, it is more inclined to soul beasts, so soul rings will be produced. If the blood concentration is low, it is more inclined to humans, so their cultivation will be close to humans. If this is the case, then they are likely to be similar to humans, forming settlements similar to villages and towns. You want me to hunt a social creature with soul Douluo strength and human wisdom. Walter is also a top level soul Douluo. Even special 50,000-year soul beasts can be hunted, but Amon's request is really a bit outrageous. Even a titled Douluo may not be able to do it. Sometimes, having human wisdom and emotions may be the biggest flaw. Mr. Walter should understand this. Amon pinched his glasses and smiled. I will select the right target. Leave the intelligence work and early arrangements to me this time. You just need to help me hunt at the right time. Okay. Walter nodded in agreement. In the special training ground for the participating teams of BD College, Yan Jin leaned against the wall of the ring with his arms around his chest. The light shone diagonally, casting a large shadow on the 10-meter hiring point. Sun Boyuan came over with 3 people. He looked at the participating teams, did not see the captain Amon, and did not ask much. He introduced to the other 7 people. These are the top 3 in the college's individual competition. They will join your team as substitutes. I hope you can get along well. They were all familiar faces. Brady, Yang Fipeng, Gong Chengan. There were only a few strong students in the college. Vidiel and Alia basically knew them all. You introduce yourselves. Sun Boyuan said to the 3 people. Brady, level 38 strong attack war soul master, martial soul flame lion. Yang Fipeng, level 36 agility attack war soul master, martial soul golden winged eagle. Gong Chengan, level 37 strong attack war soul master, martial soul sword tailed dragon. Hey, new companion. Yan Jin walked closer, showing an excited look. There is a rule in our team that new companions need to fight with the original members to test their strength. Rommel picked his nose and said, there is no such rule at all. She added it now. Yan Jin used his elbow to hit his stomach, but was blocked by a barrier. Watching the interaction between the two, Brady smiled knowingly. Well, since Yan Jin is so interested, we will accompany you. Very good. Yan Jin clenched his fists and jumped onto the ring with a backflip. Let's try it. The three of you come together. Brady jumped up without hesitation. The other two hesitated a little and followed the ring, but they had a hint of anger in their hearts after all. They were the top 3 in the individual competition of the internal competition of the academy. Wanting to fight 1 against 3. Who are they looking down on? 1 against 3. Is she a little too arrogant? Alia sat on the edge of another arena of the same height, supporting her chin with both hands, and asked in a voice like a silver bell, arrogant? Not necessarily. Vidiel recalled the battle between Yan Jin and Amon a few days ago, with a smile on his face. Although that battle ended with Yan Jin being beaten unilaterally, it didn't mean anything. After all, in Vidiel's heart, Amon has always been mysterious and powerful. The surging soul power emanated from Yan Jin, emitting a powerful pressure. She also informed the other party of her level and type according to the tradition of soul masters fighting. Yan Jin, 49 level strong attack system fighting soul sect. Even though he was prepared, Vidiel fell into silence when he heard her level. Rommel looked as if he had seen a ghost. What's going on? Wasn't she level 40 before? Even if she got the spirit ring, she shouldn't have jumped so much at once, right? Bing. Lan's cold face was full of astonishment, and there was a trace of unwillingness in her eyes. 2 years ago, she could fight back and forth with Yan Jin on the ring. Only 2 years have passed, and now there is a gap between them like a chasm. Sun Boyuan opened his mouth and silently lowered his posture again. According to Yan Jin's previous performance, it didn't seem to be too much pressure for a level 49 spirit power level to beat him, a level 54 spirit king. He seemed to be a very low profile instructor standing opposite Yan Jin. Brady, Yang Fipeng, and Gong Chenggan looked solemn. It was the first time for them to feel such a strong and direct sense of oppression from opponents of this age group. Brady secretly compared Yan Jin and Amon in his heart, and felt that the two of them gave people completely different feelings. The former was as violent as a volcano, flamboyant and passionate, and he could feel the heavy pressure coming at him. As soon as he stood opposite her when facing Amon, you won't feel how strong he is at first, but when the fight really starts, you will feel a deep sense of powerlessness, a deep and restrained pressure. Yang Fipeng no longer hesitated, and the slight anger in his heart caused by being despised gradually dissipated, leaving only a strong desire to fight. In a golden halo, his hands turned into wings and flew into the sky. Gong Chenggan's hands turned into claws, his knee joints turned over and bent forward, and his tailbone continued to extend, forming a tail with a bone sword at the end. He quickly ran behind Yan Jin, staring at her with dark yellow pupils. Yan Jin looked at Brady, who had some lion features in front of him, and laughed. Haha, it's a bit like the big cat before. Her hands were covered with magma, and as her martial spirit appeared, the 2 yellow, 1 purple and 1 black soul ring configuration was also revealed to everyone. Black soul ring. The 4th soul ring absorbed a 10,000-year soul ring, and this extraordinary fact once again provoked their nerves. The battle ended very quickly, and Brady and Gong Chenggan were almost knocked off the ring by Yan Jin's all-out big fire breathing. As soon as they met, Yang Fipeng, who had the ability to fly, circled in the air for a long time, and was finally knocked down by a volcanic bomb. He. Yan Jin proudly put her hands on her hips and smiled on the ring. She jumped off the ring, walked to Lei Yin, and said, in case there are any more idiots who make Amon unhappy, I will beat them all first. Lei Yin looked at his sister in surprise, not expecting that there was such a deep meaning behind her behavior. She actually has a brain. Rommel said Lei Yin's thoughts without hesitation. Chapter 90. Tang San, Douluo and Amon. After the royal investigator Monsieur arrived at BD City, he was informed that Kubero had left for the imperial capital to report on his work. He went to Fekris land to visit Marquis Fekris, who was seriously injured and unconscious, and then returned to North City, temporarily acting as the city lord and presiding over the daily affairs of North City. Walter withdrew his minions and lay dormant patiently. The royal family had not waited for Lord Kubero to come back to report on his duties, and classified him as missing. Everyone knew that this disappearance was actually tantamount to death, and Emperor Zuai unleashed his thunderous wrath again. Then, the expected turmoil in the north did not occur, and the situation fell into a strange balance. Except for the 2 sons of Marquis Fekris, who were running around and fighting openly and secretly for the position of Marquis. There was no big trouble. The daily training of the Northland team proceeds in an orderly manner. But Captain Amon has never participated, and Yan Jin rarely participates. The snow lotus that Walter gave to Yan Jin was given to Lei Yan by her. After Lei Yan took it, his soul power level increased from the original level 31 to 36. Compared with fairy grass, snow lotus is obviously inferior. Although the level of improvement is not much lower, it lacks the improvement of cultivation talent. On a sunny morning, a caravan composed entirely of Amon set out from the north and headed towards Hanhei City. In order to avoid being discovered to be abnormal, not all Amon in the caravan showed their soul master talents except for a few Amon, such as caravan stewards and guards, who showed the strength of the soul lord. The rest of the coachman Amon and handyman Amon were just like ordinary people. The Amons brought some special products from the north on the carriage, peddling or purchasing some goods along the way, heading west as if they were really a caravan. In the sunset forest, Douluo, who had been meditating in seclusion without getting any results, walked out of the canyon and went to Xiandao City to relax. He was invited by Prince Snowstar to visit his mansion. It happened that everyone from Shrek Academy was invited by Kinming to go to Xiandao Royal Academy to discuss the merger of Shrek into Xiandao Royal Academy. Zhu Beng and Zhu Crossing were worried that Prince Zhu King's power would further expand, so they interfered. Due to their obstruction, the merger of the colleges failed, and Shrek and his party left angrily. Douluo also learned from his granddaughter Dogu Yan's story that Tang San had eliminated the snake venom through some method. This aroused his interest and wanted to find out the reason, so he took action directly and captured Tang San, who had left Xiandao Royal Academy and headed to Lanba Advanced Soul Master Academy. When Tang San Yao woke up after being taken to Sunset Forest by Douluo, the first thing he did was to mock Douluo. "Your poison is just garbage." Douluo was furious, but when Tang San revealed the fact that he was poisoned, he couldn't help but be stunned. Why is there another kid who sees that I have been poisoned by him? Could it be that the kid before was not afraid of death and leaked the secret? No, he shouldn't be so unwise after being poisoned by me. Could this kid be Amon's so-called backup man? Do you know Amon? Douluo asked with a frown, the killing intent in his eyes lessening a bit. Douluo didn't expect Amon to win the Soul Master competition, but just waited for him to come and work for him. In 2 years he took a fancy to Amon's divergent thinking. After all, a correct idea can make research work a lot smoother. Since Tang San might be Amon's friend, he might also have some good ideas, so his attitude became much kinder. Tang San, who noticed the change in Douluo's attitude, was a little puzzled. Who is Amon? Seeing that Tang San's expression didn't look fake, the murderous intent in Douluo's eyes reappeared. Since you don't know Amon, how did you know that I was poisoned? He was no longer prepared to let Tang San leave alive, and frankly admitted the fact that he had been poisoned. Tang San broke out in cold sweat and spoke quickly. Isn't this kind of thing obvious? On cloudy and rainy days, do you get a gradually increasing numbness and itching on your ribs? Once at noon and midnight, and it lasts for more than an hour. And late at night, around the third watch, there will be a pinprick-like sting on the top of the head and in the heart, and the whole body will convulse for half an hour. Is life worse than death? Seeing that he spoke in such detail, Douluo was also stunned. Amon didn't speak so carefully before. He thought that this kid had something, and his murderous intention was greatly reduced. There are some ways that you can detoxify me? Douluo asked. Seeing that there was a turn of events, Tang San gradually let go of the anxiety and uneasiness in his heart, trying to take the initiative. He snorted coldly and said lightly, "I won't give you a solution if you can. Just kill me. You will only die more miserably than me, and your beautiful granddaughter will end up like you in the end." Life spanned 70 years, so Tang San expected that Douluo didn't care about him, but he wouldn't care about his granddaughter. Tang San didn't know that title Douluo could live for 300 years, but one thing was true. Douluo cared about his granddaughter. However, after Amon gave the idea, Douluo was able to detoxify his granddaughter, but he lacked a high quality soul bone. What troubled him now was just how to detoxify himself. "Ah, you threatening me?" Douluo's eyes were filled with coldness. He waved his hand and light green smoke enveloped Tang San. Tang San screamed hysterically. He felt that every muscle and every inch of his skin was being eaten by ants and burned by flames. No, this is not right. How could he not care about his granddaughter? Could he really be a cold and heartless person? But judging from his previous interaction with Douluo Yan at the Shiandao Royal Academy, it doesn't seem like that. Recovering some rationality in the pain, Tang San gritted his teeth and shouted, "Stop, I can detoxify you, Douluo." Bo retracted the poison mist and sneered, "Boy, don't you have a lot of backbone?" Tang San couldn't help but sneer back, "I just didn't expect you to be as heartless as a snake and scorpion, and don't even care about your own granddaughter, Douluo." Bo's expression turned cold, and he waved his hand again, covering Tang San with poison mist, letting him struggle in pain, wailing and screaming, until a quarter of an hour later, he retracted the poison mist again. "Little ghost, don't challenge my patience," Tang San twitched, and it took a long time for him to catch his breath. He looked at Douluo with a look of hatred and a trace of fear that he himself could not detect. Damn it, damn it, damn it, if I don't take revenge, Tang San, swear not to be a human being. He shouted wildly in his heart. He lowered his head and covered his face with his hair to prevent his hatred from being noticed by the other party. He took a few deep breaths, adjusted his emotions, and then raised his head again. "Tell me, how do you plan to detoxify me?" Douluo asked. Tang San did not say anything sarcastic this time. He tried his best to control his emotions and asked back in a calm tone, "Will I be worthless to you if I say it? Would I be so stupid, Douluo?" Bo smiled contemptuously. "Maybe you still have some brains, but you are definitely not smart. Simply tell me your ideas. I will judge for myself, and if it is feasible, we will continue to talk." Chapter 91. Tang San becomes more confident. Tang San hesitated for a moment and said carefully, "I have two ways to deal with the poison in your body. One is to use some herbs that can suppress the poison to dissolve it directly, but this will also make your poison power disappear." Douluo. Bo flatly refused. "Don't mention this method. Tell me another one." Such an answer did not surprise Tang San, and he continued to say, "Another plan. The reason why you are poisoned is because you have a beast martial spirit instead of a weapon martial spirit. Although soul power can suppress the poison to a certain extent, they have also become a part of your body. If you want to keep the poison in your body, you must find a parasite to store the poison." Douluo. Bo looked at Tang San with a strange expression, and before he finished speaking, he coldly spit out two words, "soul bone." Tang San's expression froze, and he looked at Douluo with a bit of surprise. "Huh? Do you think I can't think of such a simple method? I knew it a long time ago, and I'm trying it." Douluo's tone was a bit arrogant. Tang San calmed down, as if he had figured something out, and smiled. "Did you really think of this yourself? If I'm not mistaken, this is what the man called Amon told you, so you won't worry about your granddaughter. You are sure you can cure the poison in her body? She just lacks a soul bone, but you can't cure your own poison, because the difficulty is not at the same level. Besides, he just said this idea, and didn't tell you how to do it specifically. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here listening to me nagging, and you would have killed me long ago." Douluo. Bo was silent, and didn't refute. After getting confirmation, Tang San felt a flash of resentment towards Amon. If it weren't for him, he could easily control Douluo, and wouldn't have to endure so much torture. He remembered this name in his heart. After understanding the key, Tang San finally regained his confidence. "You have to know that ideas are always just ideas. Whether they can be realized is still an unknown. I believe you have tried many methods, but you still can't solve the problem. Of course, your poison is not only intense, but also very stubborn. They have long been integrated with your body and become an inseparable part of it. You may not find a solution, even if you try for a long time. If you force it with soul power, it will only cause a stronger backlash. I'm not sure yet. I have about 20% to 30% chance of solving your problem. The specific situation has to wait for me to study it. If there is a suitable medicine, the probability can be increased to 30% to 40%. Only 30%? Douluo frowned. 30% is not low. I'm afraid that in the whole continent, I'm the only one who has 30% chance of curing you. Tangsen believed in the Tang sect's poisoning methods and said proudly, okay. But I have to test your poison attainments first. Douluo smiled sinisterly, pointed some Laura horse. He has to slip away to know, otherwise he dare not let Tangsen treat him. After all, if Tangsen is just bragging, it may aggravate his symptoms afterwards. Douluo poisoned Tangsen and took him to the yin-yang eye of ice and fire, telling him that he could take the herbs in the canyon at will and use them as detoxification materials. After seeing the yin-yang eye of ice and fire and the surrounding herbs, Tangsen was like a mouse in a ice jar, even being tortured, and the resentment of being poisoned and humiliated faded a lot, and only joy and excitement remained in his heart. Point outside the canyon, the poisoned Amon and 3 Amons whose personalities were judged by the Amons as inferior, gathered together around a fire. Point on the fire was an iron pot, which stewed mushrooms, wild vegetables, and a pheasant. Point under the pot, there were several skewers, stuck in the ground, close to the fire, and the rabbit meat on the skewers was sizzling, and looked very delicious. The scream just now should be that Tangsen was caught by Douluo. The poisoned Amon said. Point 1 Amon stroked his monocle and asked, what if Douluo has already cured his own poison, and doesn't need Tangsen? There was a trace of worry on his face, as if he was really worried about Tangsen's safety. Point the poisoned Amon chuckled and said, then we can only say that it's bad luck, whether it's for us or Tangsen. Another Amon held a bunch of roasted mushrooms in his hand. This is the first butterfly effect we cause that affects the protagonist. I hope the plot can get back on track. The poisoned Amon stared at the direction of the valley. It's not a big problem. As long as Douluo needs Tangsen to detoxify, they will be attracted by each other's knowledge in the discussion and exchange of the use of poison, which will lead to the result of the original work. TSK, I actually hope that Douluo will just kill Tangsen like this. It's better to kill the little punk as soon as possible. Compared with him, I would rather focus on Kan Ringsu. Well, to steal her heart. The last Amon bit a wild fruit in his mouth and stirred the pot with a soup spoon made of soul power. The personalities of Amons are different. Some are noble, some are despicable, some are lazy, and some are diligent. Some Amons have inherited more of a certain aspect of human nature and will show more desires and be more easily affected by emotions. Of course, on the whole, this will not affect Amon's actions because the sum of the wills of all Amons will be equal to the original, undivided will of Amon. In addition, no matter which Amon, the most basic thinking logic will not change. I don't care what you think, but please cooperate with me during this period. If there is any stealing heart plan, I will vote for you when selecting the executor. The poisoned Amon promised. Thank you very much. This is an exchange of interests between Amon and Amon. Shy and our Royal Academy, in the office of the Education Committee. Point a medium-sized, slightly thin man who looks 40 or 50 years old, a plump beautiful woman, and a strong man with a hooked nose, wide cheekbones, and a cunning look, are waiting anxiously. Point these 3 people are Uzaya Gang, Liu Erlong, and Flanders, who discovered Tangsen's disappearance and judged that it was related to Douluo and came to inquire about Douluo's whereabouts. Meng Shenji walked into the office and saw their anxious expressions. He asked with a little confusion, what happened? You? Xiana Gang explained the whole story to him. Meng Shenji frowned and told them all the information he knew about Douluo, but politely refused their request for help. Xiana Gang and the other 2 did not force them, because they also knew that without any relatives or friends, no one would go to face a titled Douluo for a stranger who had only met them a few times. They left Shy and our Royal Academy without delay and rushed to Sunset Forest as fast as possible. Chapter 92. The Golden Triangle. Tangsen, just like in the original novel, picked up the fiery apricot and 8 angled mysterious ice grass, and entered the intersection of the yin spring and yang spring of the yin-yang eye of ice and fire, to refine them. In a corner that he didn't notice, the acacia heart, broken red with a circle of deep white rings on its petals, turned slightly and stared at him through the mist. As night fell, the moon in the sky was particularly round. The bright moonlight made the earth not appear dark. A vigorous whistle broke the silence of the night, the whistle rolling like thunder, startling the soul beasts in the forest. This was Douluo expressing his dissatisfaction after experiencing pain. Not long after, 3 whistles sounded at the same time, 2 strong and 1 weak, either low or passionate, all filled with strong hostility, quickly approaching the place where the first whistle sounded. Sitting on a branch, Amon, who was dozing with his back against the tree trunk, opened his eyes. He raised his right hand and squeezed his monocle, whispering to himself, "Is it coming?" He jumped up and hopped between the branches to get closer to the place where the battle was about to break out. After the Golden Iron Triangle failed to negotiate with Douluo, a battle broke out between the 2 sides, the sun and the moonshine, and the gold turns. Flanders shouted. 3 golden rays of light shot up from Flanders, Uzziah Gang, and Liu Erlong, and spread out from their feet at the same time. Amid the golden light, a triangle was formed with the 3 people as the vertices, and complex patterns were generated spontaneously. The chubby Luo Sanpeo appeared out of thin air, and landed in the circle in the center of the triangle. The soul rings of the 3 people emerged at the same time and gathered on Luo Sanpeo. After absorbing the soul ring, Luo Sanpeo's body grew at a very fast speed. Diamond-shaped scales grew on his chubby body, and 2 twisted horns grew from the top of his head. In a few breaths, it changed from a naive pig to a 20-meter-long golden dragon. The huge dragon wings stretched out, and the terrifying pressure overflowed. The heavy breath made Douluo frown. Emerald light burst out from Douluo's body. The first 7 soul rings lit up, and his tall and thin body quickly expanded into a huge green-scaled snake. A dragon and a snake confronted each other in the air, and the terrifying pressure made the soul beasts in the forest fall into anxiety. Amon hid in the dark, covered himself with a soul barrier, and at the same time, activated the first soul ring. To steal his own soul performance. His breath was covered by soul power, and the soul power fluctuations were stolen by soul skills. Unless you see him directly, you can't detect him by soul power perception alone. This is also the reason why he can move outside the valley for so long without being discovered by Douluo. The titled Douluo. Luo Sanpeo let out a loud dragon roar, and a golden lightning spurted out of his mouth. The jade phosphorus snake king transformed by Douluo did not dodge or evade, and spit out a green mist. The 2 behemoths fought in the air after fighting for a while. The enraged Douluo used his 8th soul skill, Time Freeze. Even though he could fight the title Douluo briefly, after using the martial soul fusion skill, the strength of the Golden Iron Triangle was still weaker, and the battle ended with Douluo's victory. Just as Douluo was about to kill the 3 people, Tangsun arrived, stopped Douluo, winked at him, and talked to the 3 people. "Have you cured the poison?" Douluo looked at Tangsun in surprise. "That's right, you own a treasure land without knowing it. There are many medicinal herbs with miraculous effects there. I'm now 50% sure that I can help you detoxify." 50%? Douluo's face showed a touch of emotion. "Okay, I'll let the 3 of them go, and you quickly detoxify me." Tangsun, who thought he had the initiative, did not give in, and put forward his own conditions. "I need you to agree to 3 conditions before I'm willing to detoxify you." Douluo pondered for a moment, and felt that blindly threatening was not a good choice, so he chose to give in. "What conditions do you say?" "First, after the detoxification, the herbs here are at my disposal." "Impossible. Do you think I don't know how precious the herbs here are?" "Amon is willing to exchange a piece of 10,000-year soul bone for one." Douluo flatly refused. Amon, it's Amon again. Tangsun made a note in his heart with hatred, and felt a strong hostility towards this person, who he had never met, but had repeatedly frustrated him. 10,000 years soul bone. "So your granddaughter's poison has been cured?" Tangsun asked calmly. That's not the case. Amon said he could win the college competition, and then he would give me a soul bone." Douluo said honestly. "Heh." Tangsun sneered. "I thought it was some idiot who was willing to exchange a herb for something as precious as a 10,000 years soul bone." Although, in Tangsun's mind, the preciousness of the fairy grass is higher than the 10,000 years soul bone, but this does not prevent him from devaluing the value of the fairy grass at this moment, to achieve his own goal. It Turns out that you are stupid and you were taken advantage of. Tang San used a small verbal offense to test Douluo's tolerance for him. Huh? Do you think I'm that stupid? I poisoned him. If he fails to fulfill the agreement, he will die of the poison in 2 years. Of course, if he doesn't win the championship, I won't kill him. I just let him help me study poisons. Douluo retorted. Did you have murderous intentions towards him at that time? Tang San asked suddenly. Douluo did not deny it. Tang San shook his head. You were fooled by him. If I'm not mistaken, he should be sure to cure your poison and would propose such a deal. First, he gets a herb for free, and second, he lets you let him go with peace of mind. After all, your poison attainments are just like that. After solving the poison Douluo gave him, taking fiery apricot delicate and 8-angled mysterious ice grass, and knowing Douluo's urgent needs, Tang San also became a little tougher and belittled Douluo's level of poison again. In fact, Tang San was not sure what kind of mentality Amon had in proposing such a deal to Douluo, but he was happy to throw some dirty water to make Douluo suspicious and bring trouble to the other party. Douluo was a little angry, both because of Tang San's belittlement of his poison attainments and because such a possibility did exist. Thinking back carefully, Amon was too calm at the time, and he seemed to have been led by the other party. Stop talking nonsense. Change the conditions quickly. Don't mention anything too extreme. Douluo said coldly. Seeing his tone cool down, Tang San also restrained himself a little and was no longer so presumptuous. Then let me choose 10 plants. No, too many. At most 5 plants. After seeing that Amon and Tang San both showed their desire for herbs, Douluo realized that the value of these herbs seemed to be much higher than he had initially estimated, and silently raised their importance in his mind. Too few, at least 9 plants. Otherwise I won't have enough to share when I take it back. Tang San bargained. 7 plants. Douluo said firmly. Tang San thought for a moment, nodded and agreed. Okay, 7 plants. Chapter 93 Hanhei City. The second condition is that no matter what time in the future, you can't harm anyone related to our Shrek Academy. Tang San said with burning eyes. Douluo sneered. Haha, what are you dreaming about? Whenever I'm attacked, I won't fight back. What if my enemies join in? Do you think I will agree to such a condition that puts such a big shackles on myself? You is what you do for me so valuable. Tang San's expression changed, and he whispered, this is your life, Douluo's green eyes were filled with coldness. It's also your life, and the lives of the 3 of them. Do you want me to choose one now, and torture him to death bit by bit with poison? You dare? What am I afraid of? Douluo said disdainfully. Stop proposing some fanciful things. In terms of propriety, you are much worse than Amon. Douluo was a little annoyed by Tang San's greed, and just because he knew the detoxification method, he opened his mouth again and again and made unrealistic demands. Compared to this, the deal with Amon seemed much more comfortable. Amon again. The more Tang San heard this name, the more disgusted he became. He took a deep breath and said coldly, the second condition is to let my teachers leave. In addition, I'm not allowed to take the initiative to take action against the current Shrek 7 devils. Shrek 7 monsters? Douluo was stunned. That's Dame Yubei, Oscar, me, Mahangjin, Xiao Wu, Ningrangrong, and Zhu Zuking. Tang San explained. Douluo pondered for a moment and agreed. Yes, but you are excluded. Otherwise I won't be able to do anything to you. If you play some tricks while detoxifying, I will definitely have to teach you a lesson. Tang San's expression was stagnant. There was no need to say so directly that he wanted to attack me. The stiffness on his face only lasted for a moment before he returned to normal, nodded and said, okay, what is the third condition? Douluo asked proactively. Not sure yet. I'll tell you after I think about it. Tang San did not put forward all the conditions rashly, intending to decide based on the situation. Then, I also have the right to refuse. I can't pay too much for your condition. Douluo said calmly. Tang San frowned slightly and replied, okay. Afterwards, Tangsun went back and explained to Yu Gang and the others who were waiting at the spot that Douluo had no ill intentions towards him, but just wanted to keep him for a while to discuss and communicate with each other on the topic of using poison. Yu Gang and others were doubtful. Of course he knew Douluo's attainments in the art of poison. If Tangsun could learn from him, he would naturally benefit a lot. But Douluo had always been moody, and he was a little worried about Tangsun's safety. Seeing their worries, Douluo smiled coldly. You can come to visit him at any time, but not too often. I don't like to be disturbed. Hearing this, Yu just felt relieved and bowed to Douluo. Then I will ask Senior to take care of the mistress. If this kid is rude in any way, I hope Senior will forgive me. On a leaf, a translucent worm with 12 rings and a star-like color twisted its body and got into the shadow of the branches and leaves not far away. After receiving the message from the worm of time, Amon, who was poisoned, chuckled. Tangsun rescued Yu Gang and the others. It looks very different from the original work. He glanced at the other Amon beside him and said, go and tell the main body the news. Even if Tangsun is alive or dead, it won't change our short-term plan. But the main body likes the feeling of being in control of the overall situation. Knowing that the butterfly effect here does not have too much impact can make him feel at ease. Hanhei City is the largest city on the western frontier of the Xiandao Empire and the largest seaside city and port city on the Douluo continent. The huge city was built along the sea. The main body of the city was built on a mountain by the sea, encompassing the entire mountain and radiating to the coast. A caravan from the Northland came to this magnificent city along with the flow of people. The guards guarding the city came for a routine inspection. They saw some furs and mountain products that they had never seen before in the truck, and they couldn't help but ask, is this your first time in Hanhei City? Where did these things come from? The leader of the caravan, Amon, who had a personality close to the original Amon, touched the bottom edge of his monocle and answered with a chuckle, we are from the north. It is said that shipping things from the interior can be dozens of times more expensive than shipping them here. You can also get a lot of profit by shipping things here back, so I took the risk and gave it a try. As he spoke, he stuffed a few Jintama coins into the guard's hand without leaving a trace. A satisfied smile appeared on the guard's face. I wish you a prosperous business. He waved his hand to let him go. After entering the city, the leader Amon weighed the newly acquired money bag with a slightly evil smile on his face. There are some things that the main body cannot do. He needs a stable environment, but the clone is different. Alright, everyone, Amon, please disperse. After you find the clues, use spiritual communication to inform others. The Amons were either alone, in pairs, or scattered in groups, looking for clues about the mermaid clan in this huge vast sea city. At the city gate, the soldier who accepted Amon's bribe wanted to put the Jintama coins into his money bag, but he searched around and couldn't find his money bag. What the hell? What's going on? I clearly remembered to bring it with me. Leader Amon looked at the pedestrians coming and going on the street. There was a big racial difference between the residents of Hanhei City and the people of Northland. Most people here are short and dark-skinned. Even Amon, who is only of medium height in the north, feels like a crane standing out from the crowd here. He stared at the tallest building on the top of the mountain in the distance. There is the main hall of the Wuhan Hall. Although Hanhei City is not the capital of Fasno province, due to its important geographical location, it is an outpost to guard against the forces of Poseidon Island. Therefore, the Wuhan Hall here is also at the main hall level, and the hall master is a Soul Saint level Cardinal Pierce. Amon did not go directly to the Wuhan Hall, but entered a clothing store and completely changed his dress style. He went to a barber shop, permed his hair, and dyed it golden, and then walked slowly towards the Wuhan Hall. Walter once greeted the Wuhan Hall here and asked them to assist Amon's actions. However, once he contacted them, some information from his side would definitely be sent to Walter. Amon didn't want him to know that he could split into clones, and the clones could act independently hundreds of kilometers away. So he had to pretend to be a completely different person, accept Amon's commission, and work for him. Arriving at the spirit hall, Amon showed the token given to him by Walter, and the guard at the door respectfully let him In point one of them hurriedly ran into the hall to make a report. Walking into the hall, a man in a red robe who looked to be in his 50s or 60s came over. He looked at Amon for a moment and said, "I'm Pierce, the master of this main hall. What is your name?" Amon showed a warm smile on his face and said softly, "Just call me Adam." Chapter 94. Half a year after a period of fermentation, the news of the assassination of Marquis Chris finally spread, and it was not limited to the upper class. Rommel took care of his teammates' emotions, and did not do anything to make people angry in front of Alia. Binglan, Lian, and Yan Jin all expressed sympathy for Alia's experience, and went to her home to visit. Vidiel and Brady came to Alia's villa together. While waiting at the door, they smiled at each other. As former opponents, they knew each other quite well. "Did you notice it?" Brady asked. "Well, for us, this is a good opportunity, isn't it?" Vidiel smiled. Another carriage stopped by the side, and Franco got off the carriage. "Why are you here?" Vidiel was a little puzzled. In his impression, Franco, apart from having some talent as a soul master, has never been good at politics. "My dad asked me to come, although I don't know what I'm here for." Franco took the red wine from the servant. This was a small gift for the host when visiting. The door opened, and Alia was wearing a silver white dress with gems. There was no sadness on her bright face. She said in a silver bell-like voice, "You are here. Please come in." The three handed their gifts to Alia's servants, and followed her into the reception room. "You don't look sad at all." Vidiel smiled and picked up a glass of wine, nodding to the maid serving beside him. "What's there to be sad about? At least, I don't have to worry about someone sending me to a marriage in the short term." Alia had a faint smile on her face. "Since we are all teammates, we should naturally help each other. I will stand firmly on Vidiel's side, and likewise, on your side." Brady said. Among the three, his right to inherit the title is the most stable. He is the eldest son in the family, has good talent, and his mother's family is also powerful. Vidiel smiled and thanked him. The current situation was much better than he had expected at the beginning. 2 years ago, his father had already planned to replace the heir, but it had been pending. Recently, he had no intention of doing so. Every time he returned home, he felt indescribably happy. When he saw the gloomy faces of his half-brothers, he said to Alia, "I will also be your staunch ally." Franco, who was enjoying the cakes brought by the maid, said vaguely, "Me too." Alia picked up the wine glass. "I will remember this favor. Cheers to our friendship." The 4 cups collided with each other, making a crisp sound. Half a year passed quickly. While Tangsun was detoxifying Douluo, they exchanged their views on the way of poison. The two met too late, and they were bosom friends, and formed a friendship of both teacher and friend. Tangsun took Wangchuan Kyulishu. This was not included in the 7 herbs promised by Douluo. Because he took it on the grounds that he could help Douluo draw poison more carefully. After increasing his mental power, it was counted as one of the treatment consumables. After Tangsun selected the herbs according to the characteristics of the Shrek people, he also took away the fragrant Kilo fairy product as one of the treatment tools. The reason he gave was the doctor took his own medical tools in this regard. The honest man Douluo also turned a blind eye, because he still felt a little sorry for forcibly capturing Tangsun to the valley at that time. When leaving the valley, Tangsun took a deep look at the yin-yang eyes of ice and fire, as well as the fairy grass around him. With a little greed in his eyes, the treasures of heaven and earth belong to those with virtue. Since Douluo doesn't know how to use them, it's just a waste of natural resources. If there is a chance, I must get them, he thought to himself. In BD City, there have been significant changes in the past 6 months. Messiah was officially appointed as the Lord of BD City by Emperor Zuyi. A soul saint level worshipper stayed behind to protect his safety. Although he did not participate in the disputes between the nobles, he launched a drastic reform, removed many spies planted by the nobles in the city lord's forces, promoted and appointed talented civilians, and firmly grasped the power of the Northland city in his own hands. In this regard, Walter let it go and did nothing for the new city lord. Every day, he either drank tea, basked in the sun, or instructed Yan Jin. Of course, he was not good at theoretical things, and all his teachings were simple and rough practical combat. This just sweetened Yan Jin's taste point. Even if she was beaten to pieces every time, she never tired of it. Often, she would come to the door, to be beaten again. Before she had recovered from her injuries for a few days, Yan Jin's efforts were not without rewards. She broke through to level 50. With the help of Walter, she hunted a 20,000-year-old Liuhuo toad, and reached level 52 directly. Just 2 days ago, she was promoted to level 53. Alia, Vidal, Brady, and Franco walked very close to each other, and they seemed to form a small group. Good-tempered Lei Yin and annoying Rommel get along surprisingly well. Rommel always comes up with all kinds of weird stories to brag in the tavern, and Lei Yin listens with great interest every time. As the team's instructor, Sun Boyuan was so worried that his hair fell out. Although the team members are all very good, and the quality is much higher than that of previous participating teams, the coordination is simply unbearable. He specially contacted the Northland City Great Fighting Spirit Arena, hoping to find a few powerful teams for actual combat training. But none of the official members of the Northland team took him as their teacher seriously. They tried several times, but failed to organize the team, and each time less than half of the members showed up. Only Yang Fipeng and Gong Chengyan, the two alternates, listened to his command. Amon's original body had not practiced for a while. He was already level 50, although the accumulated soul power would be revealed after obtaining the soul ring. If he continued to practice, he did not do so. Because the practice efficiency at this time was not high, far less than the practice speed. After obtaining the soul ring, he was more willing to enjoy this rare free time. Although he usually interacted with the clone, he could also feel the pleasure of enjoyment from the clone's memory and get spiritual satisfaction. But it was not the original body that was resting after all. Even if Amon had always set the goal of strengthening his strength and improving his life level, and enjoyed the feeling of his soul power improving bit by bit, he would occasionally feel tired. On a sunny afternoon, Amon lay on the red roof without any image. There were no clouds in the sky, and the wind blew slowly, bringing bursts of coolness. He looked at the blue sky, emptied his mind, and relaxed his mind. A long-awaited message came from a time worm clone who rushed to BD City. The Amons of Hanhei City have locked onto the target of the 5th soul ring. Amon closed his eyes, rested for a while, suddenly opened his eyes, and sat up with his hands on the roof. He pinched the upper and lower edges of his monocle with his right thumb and index finger, and smiled. Finally here. I've been waiting for a long time. Sorry, it's a bit late. Chapter 95 Hunting Plan. At the gate of Hanhei City, an old man and a young man stopped at the same time. The young man wore a black classical robe, a pointed soft hat on his head, and a monocle on his right eye. The old man wore a white robe embellished with gold thread, and white boots on his feet, which were soft and shiny. Looking at the majestic city in front of him, Walter's face showed a look of reminiscence. My wife said before that she had been stationed here. However, I have never heard her mention any mermaid clan. I'm afraid that even here, the race you mentioned is something that is rarely known. It's indeed rare, otherwise it wouldn't have taken half a year for the news to arrive. Amon pinched his eyes, his expression slightly dull. He is making spiritual connections with the clones in Hanhei City to understand what has happened here in the past 6 months. After accepting the message from the clone, he glanced at the guard at the city gate with interest. In the past 6 months, this unlucky guard had lost his wallet 6 times. The two rested for a day in Wuhan Hall. Early the next morning, a man with dyed blonde hair, wearing a white robe, and a smile on his face, giving people an inexplicable sense of intimacy, came to the door of Wuhan Hall. He exuded a sweet fragrance, and had light makeup on his face. The guards at the door greeted him with a smile. Mr. Adam, why are you here? Adam said gently, the person I was waiting for has arrived. Amon. And Walter walked out of the spirit hall. Walter looked at Adam with a look of confusion on his face. He always felt that the blonde man in front of him gave him a sense of familiarity. He did not recognize that Adam and Amon actually looked exactly the same. After all, a person could almost become another person by putting on makeup, changing his hairstyle, and changing his clothing. Mr. Walter, this is my good friend, Adam, who found the target this time. Adam, this is Mr. Walter. Amon introduced both parties. Hello, Mr. Walter. Adam saluted. Walter nodded slightly, his eyes wandering between Adam and Amon, as if he wanted to see through the connection between the two. Under the leadership of Adam, the two came to the port and boarded a medium-sized fishing boat. On a pier on the fishing boat, there were dozens of sailors, most of whom were ordinary people, with 2 or 3 Amon clones among them. The reason why they are not all clones is because they are worried that Walter will become suspicious. 1 or 2 people with similar faces could be considered a coincidence, but if dozens of people on the entire ship had the same face shape, it would be difficult not to find a problem. The sail was lowered, and the fishing boat, half loaded with cargo, slowly sailed away from the shore. Adam looked at Walter and asked, "Mr. Walter, how much strength can you exert on the sea? Although according to my plan, there is a high probability that we will not fight at sea, but we may need to escape at sea." "No need to worry, the combat terrain does not restrict me much," Walter replied. The 3 of them came to the captain's cabin. Adam took out a chart and began to explain his hunting plan. "It took me half a year to gain the trust of the mermaid clan and gain the qualification to trade with them. Every other month, I will bring unique goods from the shore and go to the settlement of the mermaid clan to exchange for the things they collect from the sea. This is a huge profit. If there were no other substitutes for Amon, I wouldn't want to let it go." Adam intentionally or unintentionally revealed to Walter the information that he and Amon had a good relationship. After a pause, he continued, "Not all mermaids meet the requirements. First, they must have a higher proportion of sea soul beast blood. Second, they must be of the right age. And third, they must have sufficient talent and the ability to read minds." "Wait a minute. If the other party has the ability to read minds, wouldn't he be able to detect our plan when he sees you?" Walter couldn't help but interrupt when he heard this. "Well, she can read other people's voices, but she can only read instantaneous thoughts and can't check past memories. As long as she restrains her thoughts and concentrates all her thoughts on what she is doing at the moment, there is no need to worry about this." Adam explained. The mermaid's mind reading ability is similar to that of honesty, horn and mystery. As long as you restrain your thoughts, you can deal with it. This is not a problem for Adam. Moreover, the ability to read minds is not maintained all the time. There will be fluctuations in mental power before activation. This means that Adam does not have to keep his mind focused all the time, and the difficulty is reduced a lot. Adam continued, "Currently, there is only one person who meets the conditions, the second daughter of the mermaid clan leader, Yan. The specific action process is as follows." Adam pointed to the chart and drew a circle in the sea area. "This is the settlement of the mermaid clan. It is a small island, but it is not marked on the map." Then, he moved the charcoal and drew another circle on another island closer to the mainland. "I will put Amon and Mr. Walter down here. This is the selected hunting point. After that, I will go to Mermaid Island and steal the treasures they have enshrined for generations. If nothing else happens, Heian will come to hunt me down. I will lure Heian to the island where you are ambushing me. You need to kill her as soon as possible and then leave immediately. She probably has the strength to join Contra for the first time. If the arrangements are made in advance, I think it won't be difficult for you, Mr. Walter, to kill her, right? What needs to be noted is that we must move quickly, otherwise we will most likely be chased by Douluo. Douluo? Walter's face changed slightly, and he asked with a bit of solemnity, "What's going on?" Even though his combat power is second to none among Contras, and he can even fight against some less powerful titled Douluo, he does not want to be an enemy of a titled sea spirit master on the sea. Adam said with some seriousness, "Hey young sister, Sea Witch is one of the 7 sacred pillars guarding Poseidon Island. The 6th pillar is Sea Lady Douluo, but she usually guards the Poseidon pillar on Poseidon Island and won't leave easily. But if something big happens to the mermaid clan, she will probably leave the sacred pillar and go to the rescue. Mr. Walter, don't worry. I also have people in the sea near the sea god's pillar. If the sea witch leaves the sea god island, I will get the news as soon as possible." Walter thought for 2 seconds and asked, "If you can lure her into my trap, then I have a high degree of confidence in killing her. But how can you be sure that she will definitely come to hunt you down?" It must be her who comes to hunt you down, Adam said with a smile. The mermaid family are all devout believers of Poseidon. The treasure they have enshrined for generations is said to be a gem on the crown of the former Poseidon. It was given to their ancestors by the Poseidon and has been passed down to this day. Although it has no special power, it is the spiritual sustenance of the mermaid clan. They will not give up recovering the gems. Hey. Yan is the strongest among the mermaid clan, and she is the only one who can catch up with my sea-breaking shuttle. The sea-breaking shuttle is a soul guidance device that Adam purchased specifically for this operation. It can only be ridden by one person. The advantage is that it is incredibly fast. Walter looked at Adam deeply. Isn't your plan a bit simple? Adam smiled without changing and replied, sometimes, the more sophisticated the plan, the more likely it is that problems will arise, but some simple means can bring unexpected results. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96 Mermaid Village. In fact, Amon's plan is certainly not that simple, and there is another variable that needs to be excluded. That is the current patriarch of the mermaid clan, the grandfather of Heian and the sea, which point he is the strongest person in the current mermaid settlement, a soul fighter close to the title level. But he usually does not leave the settlement. Amon plans to spread his clones to make trouble in the settlement while stealing the gems in this way. Between the patriarch and Heian, one person will definitely stay to guard the settlement, and the other will be responsible for hunting down the thief who stole the gems. The one who stays in the settlement is most likely the patriarch, who rarely leaves the settlement, and the task of hunting down will naturally fall on Heian. However, there is no need to explain these to Walter, because Amon is not easy to explain where he got the manpower to cause damage in the settlement. You know, this is a mission with a 100% chance of death. If it is not for some big forces, they can't train enough Deadpools to do such things, so Amon simply concealed the existence of the mermaid patriarch. Anyway, the final result will not change. Amon sat at the bow and looked out at the sea. The sea breeze brought moist air mixed with a unique salty smell. The afternoon sun was warm and comfortable. He looked back at the sailors, who were chatting and bragging on the deck. A wave of emotion appeared in his eyes, but it soon disappeared, leaving only a deep feeling. After 3 days of sailing, the outline of an island slowly emerged in the field of vision. Adam smiled and walked to Amon and Walter, saying softly, "You two, the island ahead is the one I mentioned for ambush. The location of this island is between the mermaid settlement and the mainland, and it is convenient to retreat after the hunt is over." He handed a space ring to Amon. "Here is a soul guide speedboat with 2 seats. Use it to evacuate to the mainland immediately after killing Heian." Amon handed the ring to Walter. "Mr. Walter, please take me to retreat when the time comes." This was to give a retreat to Walter, showing his full trust in him. Walter took the ring, sensed the soul guide in the ring, frowned and asked, "If the sea witch really chases you, then you may not have time to absorb the soul ring. Generally, absorbing soul rings requires a stable environment, which cannot tolerate any interference, and absorbing soul rings of more than 10,000 years often takes a long time. Several hours is normal." Amon stroked his monocle and said with a smile, "This is not a problem for me. I don't need a too stable environment to absorb soul rings. I can absorb while moving, but I can't be attacked too strongly, because the time worms in the body can guide energy." Amon doesn't need to concentrate too much when absorbing soul rings. Amon and Walter got off the boat on this uninhabited deserted island. Their space rings carried enough water and food to live on the island for more than a month. Walter had already prepared for a few days of wind and rain, but he saw 2 simple but exquisite wooden houses in the center of the island. The furniture in the house was neat, and the bed was even covered with soft velvet quilts. He asked with a strange look, "Did your friend prepare it?" Amon nodded. "Since I'm the one who prepared the early arrangements, I naturally cannot neglect Mr. Walter in such a place." Walter nodded slightly, expressing his satisfaction with their thoughtfulness. Although he didn't mind sleeping in a tent for a few days, he would certainly accept a better choice. The sailboat continued to sail on the boundless sea, and Adam ordered, "Don't be frugal. Take out the best food and the best wine on the ship. Oh, long live the captain." The sailors cheered. 3 days later, the sailboat arrived at its destination. A wooden house hanging on the sea is sparsely distributed near the coast. These wooden houses have only windows, no normal doors, and their doors are all opened at the bottom of the house, connected to the sea, and the mermaids enter and exit the house from the sea. Adam smiled warmly on his face and nodded to the mermaids, who looked at the ship from time to time in the sea. On the island, by the river, near the inland, a dome stone building stands out among the simple wooden houses, highlighting its unique status. Not far from the stone building, there is a more exquisite stone hut, which is the residence of the mermaid clan leader. "Sister, the merchant ship is coming." A little mermaid boy jumped into the house. "Okay, I'll go over to maintain order." A girl wearing a blue half-dress, exposing her navel, and a huge fishtail below her waist nodded and said, "Her face, neck, arms, and waist are all covered with fine dark blue scales. Her teeth are sharp and not like those of humans, and there are several cracks under her ears, which are traces of fish gills." Yan walked out of the house, jumped into the river in front of the house, and swam along the river to the coast. After a while, she came to the estuary of the river and saw a blond man standing on the bow with a warm smile on his face. Because they were acquaintances, Yan only asked the guards to conduct a routine and not strict inspection of the ship. She said to Adam, "Still follow the old rules. First, complete the bulk goods trade between the village and you, and then allow your crew to set up stalls in the village square for 2 days with their own small items. After 2 days, you leave." Adam said gently, "I understand. Please." Trouble Miss Yan. Feeling the spiritual power that permeated around him, Adam gathered his mind and focused his attention on the upcoming trade, not thinking about unnecessary things. Yan's mind reading did not last too long. She retracted her scattered spiritual power, waved her hand, and the soul power surged. A stream of water pushed the boat along the river and moved towards the island. Following the river to a lake, the boat was docked on the shore. The sailors skillfully dropped the anchor and then threw down the ladder. Some people stayed on the boat, and some people climbed down the ladder and began to unload the goods. They hit 3 ground nails on the ground, straightened 3 ropes, tied one end to the side of the boat, and tied the other end to the ground nails. The packed goods were carried by the sailors, slid down the ropes from the boat one by one, and piled neatly aside. A team of mermaids came over and began to count and hand over the goods with Amon dressed as a sailor. Yan led the guards to maintain order at the scene, preventing the mermaids, who were extremely curious about the merchant ships, from approaching to avoid disrupting the trade. Adam's eyes inadvertently swept across the center of the lake, where there was a square pyramid with a statue of Poseidon on top. This was the altar where the mermaids worshipped Poseidon. Chapter 97 Action. At night, a bright moon hung obliquely in the sky. The brilliance of the moon covered the stars, so that few stars could be seen in the sky. The arrival of merchant ships is a lively event once a month for the mermaid village, which is poor in material resources and has few entertainment activities. Not exactly hospitable, but the simple mermaids held a bonfire party, arming themselves with sailors from afar, singing and dancing in the square by the lake. The wind blows from the lake, carrying a somewhat moist atmosphere. Amon, dressed as a clown, rode a unicycle with a wine barrel on his head, spinning around the bonfire, attracting applause. Yan used one fin of her huge fishtail to perform the mermaid version of Golden Rooster Independence. Amid the cheers of the tribesmen, she smiled extremely happily, revealing 2 rows of white fangs. "Adam, come and play too. Don't always act like a blockhead." She waved to Adam, who was sitting in an inconspicuous position among the crowd. Adam said with a smile on his face, "I won't. You just have fun." Yan and another mermaid girl danced a mermaid dance in the middle of the crowd. The girl's pretty face has a bright smile, and her graceful body glows with a faint luster under the light of the bonfire. She dances gracefully, and her eyes are flowing and shining with hope. After dancing, Yan walked to Adam and sat down next to him and said, "Tell me about things in your human kingdom. I've wanted to go for a walk for a long time, but Grandpa won't let me, saying that we belong to the sea." Fish will die if they leave the water before Adam could answer. She said with some lack of interest, forget it, let's not talk about it. The more I know, the more I want to see it. Curiosity will kill the beaver. She looked at the sparkling lake, feeling a little lost. Adam said calmly, the sea is as beautiful as the sea, and the land is as exciting as the land. If you want to set foot in a field that is not your own, you have to be prepared to lose everything. Just like for us, every ocean trip is an adventure with life as a bet. Yan raised her eyebrows and grinned. Since your life is in danger, why do you come to this island far away from the mainland again and again? Adam's expression remained unchanged, with a warm smile still on his face. For profit. As time passed, the crowd gradually dispersed, and the sailors returned to the sailboat one by one, discussing which mermaid girl was more beautiful. No one voted for Yan, and their hobbies had not gone to weird places in the eyes of the sailors. Yan, who has many scales on her upper body in addition to her tail, looks more like a fish than a human. Of course, except for some Amon with unique aesthetics. Yan staggered towards her home with a bit of drunkenness. She drank half a glass of wine. The mermaids only left 4 members of the escort team beside the merchant ship as the most basic surveillance, to prevent the sailors from entering the prohibited area. In the dead of night, Adam walked onto the deck and looked at the 4 guards not far away. Without any fluctuation in his eyes, 4 bugs with 12 rings and star-like colors slowly crawled behind the guard. Silently. Several Amon seemed to grow out of the ground, twisting into shape. They invariably covered the guards' mouths from behind and slit their throats with daggers made of soul power. Streams of light fell outward from Adam's body, transforming into Amon wearing classical robes and pointed soft hats. Everyone, the action begins. After Adam left a word, he took out a pair of monocles and put it on his right eye, stepped on the petals with condensed soul power, and ran towards the altar in the middle of the lake. The Amon scattered in all directions and dispersed to all parts of the village. They did not take action immediately. They hid their bodies and waited for the opportunity. Adam came to the square pyramid in the middle of the lake, climbed the steps, and stopped in front of the statue at the top. The heroic and huge statue of Poseidon gives people a faint sense of oppression, and a magnificent sea blue bead is enshrined on the table in front. Who is it? 2 harpoons came from the darkness. Adam used his soul power to condense a shield on each side to block the attack. HMPH, you outsiders really don't have good intentions. 2 mermaids, one on the left and one on the right, walked out from behind the stone pillars on both sides. They were tall and tall, with soul power fluctuations exuding from their bodies. 2 soul sect level mermaids. Adam did not tangle with them. 2 streams of light flew out of his body, transformed into 2 Amon, and faced their respective opponents. He himself took a few steps forward, grabbed the blue orb, then turned around and ran away. A mermaid blew the whistle hanging around her neck, and the sharp and harsh sound mixed with the fluctuations of soul power spread outward. At the same time, Adam also informed the Amon scattered in the village through spiritual connection to take action. Yan opened her eyes suddenly and quickly jumped out of the oval pool-shaped bed, bringing up a large splash of water. Pearl of the sea, who is so bold? Boom. Fierce flames shot up into the sky, and the warehouse storing fish oil in the village was ignited, and the flames kept burning. Burning flames lit up the sky. Yan saw strange men wearing pointed hats, holding daggers and hunting down the villagers. Their strength has reached the soul master level astonishingly, and I'm afraid it's level 40. Yan casually slapped 2 Amon to death, and found that they looked exactly the same, and their faces were somewhat familiar. She was a little hesitant, not knowing whether to clean up the weirdos in the village first or to protect the Pearl of the Sea. Yan, leave this to me. You go to the altar. An old male fisherman shouted, with powerful soul fluctuations surging around him. The village needs someone to take charge of the overall situation and stabilize the situation. Although Yan is quite capable, he is still young. With such considerations, the mermaid chief made such a decision. Yes, Grandpa. Upon hearing this, Yan immediately jumped into the river and swam to the lake in the center of the island, followed by several mermaid guards on the way to the central lake. Heian suddenly remembered that the weirdo looked exactly like the sailor riding a unicycle at the bonfire party before. She had a fierce look in her eyes, and her expression became ferocious, and she ordered, "You, go and kill everyone on the merchant ship." Yes. The mermaid god had a fierce expression and a cold look in his eyes. Not long after, they arrived at the merchant ship point. Although they were somewhat puzzled, these sailors who were sleeping soundly and looked confused when they saw them coming did not seem to have participated in the attack. But whether the sailors were innocent was not in their consideration. The mermaid gods faithfully carried out Heian's orders and killed them one by one. The hatred for humans in their hearts made them feel somewhat satisfied in such behavior. When Heian rushed to the altar in the middle of the lake, she saw two of her tribesmen lying on the ground, killed by two identical weirdos wearing monocles. Damn it. She soared from the water like a sharp arrow, jumped directly onto the altar, and said with undisguised anger, "Who are you? What is your purpose? Hand over the pearl of the sea, TSK. It's so scary." Amon stretched out his tone. He stroked his monocle with a playful smile on his face. Purpose? Guess. Chapter 98 Trap. The other Amon shrugged. "Would you stay here with us? He's going to run away." He pointed to the distance, where a water line was moving quickly along the river toward the outside of the island. "It's Adam. He stole your gem. Then he left us here to make trouble. He said that the gem is related to God and is very valuable. Steal it and sell it." The two Amons told Heian the truth in unison. The two Amons were temporarily split from the time worm in Adam's body and only had partial and modified memories. Although the two clones knew that there must be something wrong with their memories, it did not prevent them from having facts in their heads now. Heian used mind reading to find that neither of them was lying, and a bit of surprise appeared on her face. She swung her fishtail, and under the huge difference in soul power, the two Amons were killed by her tail without any resistance. Although she felt something was wrong in her heart, she could not think too much now, and immediately jumped into the lake and chased after Adam. Along the way, seeing the miserable state of the villages on both sides of the river, Heian's anger continued to rise, and at the same time she felt vaguely uneasy. She took out a conch, puffed up her cheeks, and blew it. A low voice sounded, and an invisible wave spread out. On Poseidon Island, the face of the sea witch who was sitting on the edge of the sea maiden holy pillar changed. She took out a conch, put it next to her ear and listened carefully. Then she blew the conch and said to the sea soul master beside her, "Please tell Lord Poseidon that something happened in my clan. I have to go back quickly." After that, she soared into the sky without concealing her soul power fluctuations and flew towards the direction of the mermaid village. On the sea near the sea maiden holy pillar, the four Amons felt that the terrifying soul power fluctuations gradually faded away, and their faces showed a bit of solemnity. One Amon committed suicide decisively, then two Amons cut their throats with daggers, and the last Amon followed their footsteps in the same way. Amon arranged 3 groups of clones to monitor the sea around the sea maiden pillar, with 4 people in each group. Due to the long distance, the connection between these clones and the main body and other clones is very weak, and it is impossible to transmit messages through mental connection. But the main body can roughly sense its position, as well as life and death. These 4 Amon clones died in the order of 1, 2, 1, telling the main body through such a secret code. The sea witch has left the sea maiden pillar. Adam, who was being hunted by Heian, and Amon's main body waiting on the deserted island, pinched their monocles at the same time and said, "TSK, it's troublesome. The mermaids really have a way to notify the sea witch." Amon's main body shouted to Walter not far away, "Mr. Walter, you can prepare for the battle. Move quickly. The sea witch is really out." "I know." Walter's face was a little solemn. The speed of the sea breaking shuttle was very fast, and the 3-day journey of the sailboat was only a few hours away. Watching Adam dive into the dense forest of the deserted island, Heian finally showed a somewhat ferocious smile on her face, revealing her fangs. "HMPH. Your soul power is finally used up, right? If I catch you, I will eat your flesh and blood piece by piece." After chasing for so long. Even if she is a soul beast comparable to tens of thousands of years old, or a soul master at the level of soul Douluo, she feels physically and mentally exhausted. Although Adam uses a soul guide, it also consumes a lot of soul power to maintain such a speed point. So Yan concluded that Adam must be unable to hold on before her, and his actions seemed to confirm her previous judgment. Adam didn't run too far, and a water cannon exploded in front of him, forcing him to stop. Yan floated in the air, retracted her straight right hand, and slowly landed in front of him, hand over the pearl of the sea. Adam, I thought we could be friends, and sure enough, land soul masters are cunning. Since we got along well before, I will be gentler when I eat you later. Soul masters can hunt soul beasts to obtain soul rings. For some soul beasts, eating soul masters can also increase their cultivation. Yan's bloodline is closer to soul beasts. For her, soul masters are a tonic food. Adam raised the corners of his mouth slightly, revealing a smile. Don't you think it's strange? In the vast ocean, why is there an island on my escape route? Why would I abandon the convenient soul guide and choose to escape to the land? Based on my understanding of you, would I foolishly underestimate your ability to move on the shore? Yan's pupils shrank, and she felt a strong sense of uneasiness. She was about to kill the other party, but suddenly felt a fatal threat. She quickly twisted her body and retreated. A rope as thick as a finger shot from the right. After Yan dodged, it shot into the tree trunk on the left and penetrated several trees before stopping. Walter walked out of the bushes and saw the 8 soul rings of yellow, purple, black, and black that appeared on his body. Yan's uneasiness reached its peak at this moment. She looked at the old man in a white robe with a serious expression. She wanted to retreat, but saw Adam took out a sea blue bead and played with it in his hand. At this moment, Yan suddenly understood something and exclaimed, "Is your target me? You can react. You are not too stupid." Behind Walter, Amon said in a flat tone. Yan gritted her teeth and rushed towards Adam quickly. Even though she knew that the other party's real purpose was to hunt her, and even though she understood that the other party was waiting here and must have made certain preparations, she still had a fluke. The pearl of the sea was too important to the mermaids. She could not remain indifferent to the pearl of the sea that was so close. Even if she took more risks, she had to take it back. When she was halfway through the rush, she suddenly found that her body could not move. Only then did she realize that her body had been entangled with countless silk threads that were difficult to see with the naked eye. These silk threads were sticky. If they were stuck to a single one or a few, it would not have much effect, but once the number reached a certain level, it would affect the action. She glanced at Walter's second soul ring that was lit. The other party was constantly injecting soul power to enhance the control of the silk thread. A large amount of green liquid suddenly appeared on the surface of Yan's body. These liquids were highly corrosive and constantly eroded the silk thread. Amon raised his right hand and grabbed in front of him, and the liquid on the surface of Yan's body suddenly disappeared. She looked at Amon with some horror in her eyes. She could no longer use this ability. At the same time, dozens of time worms in Amon's body launched deception on her at the same time, reducing her thinking speed. Although the spiritual gap between the two was huge, Amon's deception could not have much impact on this soul Douluo level strongman. But in front of an experienced hunter like Walter, the slightest mistake is fatal. Yan has accumulated too many disadvantages. She rashly stepped into the forest where Walter arranged the silk thread. This is the first. After discovering that she was ambushed, she did not evacuate immediately, but thought about taking back the pearl of the sea. This is the second. Amon stole the skill that could corrode the silk thread. This is the third. Amon's mental influence. This is the fourth. Walter seized the moment when she was in a trance and launched the fifth soul skill. The vicious rope. Gun. Countless silk threads gathered into two spears, one in front and one behind, piercing Yan's body. Chapter 99 Absorbing Soul Rings. The blood dripped continuously, with a faint smell, and fell on the white silk thread, which seemed a bit dazzling. Yan lowered her head in a daze, looking at the spear that pierced through her abdomen and she couldn't believe that she would be defeated so quickly and so easily. She struggled to break free from the spear, but it only made the pain of the wound more intense. No matter which direction she moved from, front, back, left, or right, she couldn't break free without widening the wound. More and more silk threads fell on her, making her completely unable to resist. As if she had seen through something, her originally ferocious face became calm. When did it start? Since when did you set your sights on me? She looked at Adam and asked with a hint of doubt. At the beginning, hearing such an answer, Yan showed a look of surprise on her face and murmured, "No wonder. No wonder she didn't lose unfairly. The battle had started half a year ago. Amon spent a lot of effort to lock the target, judge the strength, and make a plan. It took half a year for this moment. An air bullet hit Yan's wound and then exploded from her body. Walter withdrew the silk thread to avoid snatching the last blow. Amon condensed a dagger, threw it far away, and pierced Yan's head. Dots of sea blue light emerged from the body of the mermaid and finally gathered together to form a dark soul ring. As if sensing something, the sea witch on the road suddenly burst out with an even more amazing momentum. Tears flowed from her eyes, and then the sadness turned into uncontrollable anger and murderous intent. Yan, looking at the dark soul ring emitting amazing energy fluctuations, Amon did not hesitate and immediately summoned the martial soul. With 12 rings, the star-shaped insect swam quickly in his palm. Following the connection in the dark, the soul power pulled the soul ring and let it approach the martial soul. The soul ring overlapped with a certain link of the time worm, and then the surging energy and endless resentment suddenly poured into Amon's body. Amon's eyes went dark, and his consciousness came to a dark space. He instantly realized that this was his soul space. Yan's soul appeared in front of him with a cold smile on her face. "Hey, you can't imagine it. We mermaids have a unique ability. If someone hunts us as soul beasts and absorbs our soul rings, our souls can enter that person's body." Amon looked at her for a moment, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. "But your soul doesn't seem to be complete. If you really have the size of a soul fighter, you can pose some threat to me. Now you are just a big bunch of resentment at best." Yan was about to launch an attack, but her movement suddenly stagnated, and endless whispers sounded, either solemn and grand, or dense and crazy. In such whispers, her body twitched uncontrollably. Eyeballs, teeth, tongue, arms, calves, every part of the body seemed to be endowed with its own consciousness. She looked at the dark space in horror. Above, there seemed to be a shadowy giant, and below, endless grey fog was surging. In the void, slippery tentacles with mysterious patterns could be vaguely seen wriggling. With just one glance, her eyeball was polluted and assimilated, turning into something like an octopus tentacle, swinging wildly in her eye socket. The tentacle that the eyeball turned into stretched into her other eye socket, reaching directly to the brain, and then kept stirring. "Ah!" Yan's spirit screamed. Tumors began to grow on her arms, and her body swelled into a disgusting mass of meat. Finally, the meat suddenly exploded, was decomposed and assimilated by the grey fog, and became part of the grey fog. Amon opened his eyes, stroked his monocle, and was about to say something, but fell silent again, looking at the sky in the distance. An astonishing soul power fluctuation was approaching quickly, and the terrible pressure that permeated the sky made people feel a sense of soul trembling. There was no need to think too much. This must be Yan's sister, the sea witch. "Sorry, how are you now? Can you move?" Walter asked. Amon nodded. "Let's retreat. It's not a wise thing to fight her here. If we drag it out for a long time, we might have to face that sea god Douluo, and that would be a sure death." Walter immediately grabbed Amon's shoulder and used the silk thread to quickly slide to the seaside. His sixth soul ring lit up, and the silk thread gathered to form a clone that looked exactly like him. Walter's clone wiped his face, adjusted his appearance, and turned into a middle-aged man who looked very heroic. If Tangson was here, he would probably recognize it at a glance. This is his father. He just looks younger, and he doesn't have that decadent temperament on him. He looks aggressive. Walter's silk thread connected to the clone after many twists and turns. Even if the sea witch could see the subtle lines, she couldn't determine the position of Walter's body by the direction of the line. Walter brought Amon to the seaside, throughout the soul guide that Adam prepared for them. Input soul power and quickly moved away. When they sensed the sea witch, the stronger sea witch naturally sensed them as well, but she did not chase the two people who escaped, but ran straight to the deserted island first. The soul guide is very fast. Under Walter's control, it is much faster than the one used by Adam to escape from the mermaid village. Even with her strength as a titled Douluo, it is not easy to catch up. Second, when she arrived above the deserted island, a blonde young man was sitting on a chair on the coast, playing with a sea blue bead in his hand. In addition, beside him, a man wearing a black classical robe and a pointed soft hat was sitting cross-legged next to Yan's body, with soul power surging on his body, and seemed to be breaking through. This is a clone left by Amon, who released his former soul power expressiveness, and simulated the state of absorbing soul rings, to confuse the sea witch. Although the sea witch knew that the two people who escaped might have some tricks, she could not leave her sister's body in the Pearl of the Sea alone. And the man who seemed to be absorbing soul rings was one of the murderers of his sister. Walter looked at Amon's clone who was absorbing the soul ring through the online clone, and then looked at Amon behind him. With a look of suspicion in his eyes, the Amon he brought with him had no soul power fluctuations at all, and he even doubted whether he had brought the wrong person. Amon, who was sitting in the back seat of the speedboat type soul guide, touched the bottom edge of his monocle with his index finger, and said with a smile, "Mr. Walter, don't look so surprised. It's just a clone skill, don't you know it?" While controlling the speedboat to sail towards Hanhei City, Walter turned back and looked at Amon. "Is this really your real body? Are you really absorbing soul rings? If I brought the wrong person, I can go back and save you on the island. It's not too late now." It's really touching that you can say that. That's a title, Douluo. But there's no need. The me now is indeed the real body. Hearing him say this, Walter didn't say anything else, but just muttered to himself, "Why are the skills of this guy so weird? It seems that none of them are used for fighting. Instead, they are very suitable for some conspiracies and tricks." Chapter 100 Seagirl Douluo. The sea witch was suspended in the air, looking down at the three people below. She could tell at a glance that Walter was not a human being, but a clone created by soul skills without him. The thread that controls the clone may be difficult to detect in the eyes of others, but at the level of a titled Douluo, you can spot it if you pay a little attention. In the sea witch's perception, a silk thread connected the thread clone's head, twisting and turning in an unknown direction. She judged that he was the main force that killed Yan, and was one of the two people who escaped using the soul guide speedboat. The terrifying soul pressure enveloped the sky like a dark cloud. The sea witch didn't say anything, and there was only cold murderous intent in her eyes. She had to deal with the three people below in the shortest possible time, and then hunt down the two who escaped. Under the effect of the third soul skill insight, Adam noticed that the sea witch was about to release an offensive soul skill. He chuckled, shook the Pearl of the Sea in his hand, and then dragged Yan's body to block it in front of me. Although Adam was unable to gain much effective information due to the large gap in strength, he could guess that it was a group skill that could attack three people at the same time, and was very deadly. The sea witch obviously cared about the Pearl of the Sea and Yan's body. As the lighted soul ring suddenly went out, Adam had a successful smile on his face. As long as the other party didn't use map cannons or use those high-level soul skills, Walter's line clone would be able to delay for a while longer, and the main body would be safer. Seeing Adam's action, Walter's eyes flashed with approval. "Very good, shameless enough." Adam had a warm smile on his face. "I take this as a compliment." Walter asked again with some doubts, "Why are you willing to stay to attract her attention? You will die." Adam just smiled. "It's a necessary sacrifice." Necessary sacrifice. Walter chewed the meaning of this sentence in his heart. The sea witch clenched her silver teeth, and the soul skill she was about to release suddenly stopped. She also let out a muffled groan, because the accumulated soul power was not released as scheduled. "Damn it, you're going to pay for what you've done." She suddenly retreated a distance and her body fell on the sea. Adam frowned. He didn't remember all the details of the original work. He didn't know what the sea witch had to do. Seeing that the other party seemed to be preparing to use some special tricks, He did not hesitate, and immediately threw out the breaking sea shuttle, input his soul power, and left quickly. Seeing the waterline moving away at an astonishing speed, the sea witch showed a sneer on her face, and released her martial soul true form. As the seventh soul ring lit up, her body expanded rapidly, and did not stop until she was more than 10 meters away. The huge fishtail touched the sea water lightly, and her beautiful face was filled with murderous intent. The enlarged sea witch looked slightly unreal. She put the black flute-shaped martial spirit to her mouth, and the ethereal flute sounded slowly. As the sound of the flute echoed, her ninth soul ring also lit up at the same time. The ninth soul skill, the sea suppressing divine comedy. This is a large-scale spiritual attack that can disintegrate other people's fighting spirit and destroy their spirit. The fact that Adam used Pearl of the Sea and Hayan's corpse as a shield made the sea witch restrained and did not dare to use physically destructive moves, so she directly used mental attacks, and this is exactly her strength. Circle after circle of black ripples quickly spread around her with her as the center. Walter frowned and cut off the auditory connection with the line clone. After thinking for a while, he felt that this was not safe enough, so he cut off the rest of the sensory connections, although he didn't know whether the other party's attack could affect the main body along the thread. Walter felt that it was better to be safe. Looking at the spreading black ripples from a distance, Adam felt like a light on his back. He judged that this might be an attack using sound as a medium, and he broke his eardrum without hesitation. Then, he covered himself with a soul shield, raising his vigilance and being ready to deal with the coming attack at any time. Amon's clone, who had been sitting cross-legged on the ground, pretending to absorb the soul ring, stopped pretending, stood up, looked at the sea witch preparing soul skills in the distance, and stroked his monocle. Glancing at the sluggish waterline clone beside him, a smile flashed across his face. This old guy is so cautious. As a circle of rich black ripples suddenly expanded, the undulating sea surface suddenly stopped, as if the pause button had been pressed. The sea surface beneath the sea witch's tail sank, and a huge pit appeared. Invisible sound waves swept across all directions, and the expression on Amon's clone, who stayed on the coast, instantly froze. Then, like a stiff sculpture, he fell straight to the ground. His body began to become elusive, and finally disappeared. After realizing that the clone on the island was dead, Adam immediately cheered up. In just 1 second, he felt as if thunder exploded in his ears. Although it had pierced his eardrums, the sound penetrated straight into his soul. The turbulent sound waves passed through the layers of murmurs and hit his soul, making him dizzy. His eyes, nostrils, corners of his mouth, and ears were all covered with blood, and he looked particularly ferocious, perhaps because no substantial sound was heard, perhaps because the distance was too far and the damage was reduced. Adam did not die immediately. His face was pale, and his body was shaking under the severe pain in his soul, but he still tried hard to maintain the operation of the broken sea shuttle. Using the 7th and 9th soul skills in succession, even the titled Douluo level sea witch felt exhausted. Not only was it a consumption of soul power, but using this move also had a huge burden on the spirit. After roughly sensing the 3 people she had chosen as her attack targets, her face was not very good. This huge consumption move did not achieve the expected effect. The blonde Adam was still fleeing. Although the clone was already stagnant, it did not disappear. The guy who absorbed the soul ring was completely dissipated. But what about the body? Not even a body was left. This is not a real person at all. While Walter's clone had not recovered, the sea witch raised her hand and fired a corrosive water cannon to disperse it, and then she immediately chased in the direction of the sea-breaking shuttle. Adam saw that the sea witch was getting closer and closer to him, and casually threw the Pearl of the Sea into the sea. Death. Struggle. The sea witch plunged into the sea. After taking back the Pearl of the Sea, she still did not let Adam go, and continued to chase him. After leaving Poseidon Island, she went to the mermaid village as soon as possible. After understanding what happened, she rushed to chase after the man with blonde hair, knowing that he played an important role in this incident. The sea witch guessed that the 2 people who escaped at the beginning were the masterminds, but Adam was also on her hunting list and had a high priority. Not long after, she caught up with breaking sea shuttle and condensed a huge soul power and smashed Adam's head with a simple palm. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like, Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.